Chapter 1984. High Heaven Square. Yongan's expression changed slightly as he let out a muffled groan and took a few steps back. Senior, what is the meaning of this? Do you want to cause trouble in my High Heaven Pavilion? Although you are a Void Sky Master, it doesn't mean I am afraid of you, Yongan said in a neither servile nor overbearing tone. The old man slowly withdrew his aura and said indifferently, I don't believe your words. Maybe you are protecting that Long Wen. You must let me search your High Heaven Pavilion, or this old master won't leave today. A cultivator beside Yongan said with eyes spitting fire, Your Serene Illusion Sect's Serene Illusion House was not destroyed by us, so what does it have to do with our High Heaven Pavilion? Also, what qualifications do you have to search our High Heaven Pavilion? The old man narrowed his eyes and flicked his right hand, sending out a burst of chi. The cultivator then let out a muffled groan and flew backwards, smashing into the wall behind him. Yongan trembled with anger as he said coldly, Senior, is your Serene Illusion Sect provoking my High Heaven Sect? The old man coldly snorted, This is the receiving Heaven Stone, not Dongyu. Even if I destroy your High Heaven Pavilion, by the time High Heaven Sect realizes it, I will have already hidden in the Serene Illusion Sect. Do you think High Heaven Sect will dare to attack my Serene Illusion Sect and do anything to this old master? Yongan took a deep breath and calmed down. The old man was right. It was the same as Zhuoan destroying the Serene Illusion House. High Heaven Pavilion was destroyed, but High Heaven Sect would establish a new High Heaven Pavilion, but they would never go against the Serene Illusion Sect for him. Junior is not lying. Senior, feel free to search. Yongan suppressed the anger in his heart and with a wave of his sleeve, removed the spirit array that blocked High Heaven Pavilion's divine sense. The old man nodded, his huge divine sense was like a radar, sweeping the entire High Heaven Pavilion. Under his powerful divine sense, every corner of High Heaven Pavilion was clearly observed by him. After withdrawing his divine sense, the old man's face was gloomy. He really couldn't find Zhuoan in High Heaven Pavilion. This old master still has some matters to attend to, so I won't stay any longer. After the old man finished speaking, he left High Heaven Pavilion, obviously intending to rush back to Dongyu. Yongan frowned slightly before finally letting out a sigh. I hope Brother Long joins High Heaven Sect as soon as possible. Otherwise, without the protection of a great force, it will be difficult for him to move around Dongyu. Dongyu is here. A deep voice sounded from within the huge flying ship. Zhuoan, who was originally sitting cross-legged in the VIP room, slowly opened his eyes. He looked through the window and saw the huge star field in front of him. East Universe was a star region in the east of the core star region. Here, the star systems were densely packed and stacked in layers. It looked like a region of starlight blended together. Yongan had said that this airship belonged to High Heaven Sect, so it would stop in the area where High Heaven Sect was located. The airship came to a stop on a huge continent where High Heaven Sect was located. What was even stranger was that there were countless rays of light in the sky above the continent. These rays of light were as complex as the veins of a human body, and they extended from the sky to the starry sky outside the continent. With Zhuoan's divine sense, he could clearly see that these rays of light were actually like winding channels, extending towards the planets and star systems around the continent. Moreover, the distance between the planets and star systems here was not far. Even if one used an star plate, it would not take much time to cross them. This was the advantage of a star field. Most of the star systems were gathered in a star field, making them closer to each other. The number of cultivators here was also much higher than outside of the star field. This was why the martial Dao was so prosperous, and great forces were born in this star field. After the airship landed, Zhuoan came out of the VIP room. When he was about to leave the cabin door, a graceful female cultivator came in front of Zhuoan. Zhuoan looked at the female cultivator in front of him. This woman was quite beautiful, and her pair of peach blossom eyes were filled with a hint of gentleness, making people want to protect her. He knew that since this woman was blocking his way, she should have something to talk to him about. Esteemed guest, Sir Ren told me that since this is your first time in Dongyu, there are definitely some places that you are not clear about. Therefore, I am here to be your guide, the female cultivator said generously. While Zhuoan was sizing up the female cultivator, The female cultivator was also sizing up Zhuo Wen. No matter how she looked at it, the young man in front of her was just a true god. Was there a need for Ren Yong'an to be so cautious? Although the female cultivator was very puzzled about Ren Yong'an's instructions, she knew that Ren Yong'an must have a deep meaning. However, Zhuowen shook his head and said, "I don't need a guide, but if you have a star map of Dongyu, you can give it to me." The female cultivator was startled and immediately nodded. She took out the star map and handed it to Zhuowen. "This is the complete star map of Dongyu." After saying that, the female cultivator left in a carefree manner. Zhuowen's words were very clear. He did not intend to use her as a guide, so the female cultivator did not pester him. Besides, Zhuowen's cultivation was not much higher than hers, so the female cultivator was naturally unwilling to be a guide for a cultivator whose cultivation was similar to hers. Now that Zhuowen said that he did not need a guide, it was exactly what the female cultivator wanted. After taking the star map, Zhuowen checked the location of Dongyu's ancient transmission arrays and found that there were only a total of 3 ancient transmission arrays in Dongyu. These 3 ancient transmission arrays were controlled by the 3 most powerful sects in Dongyu, namely High Heaven Sect, Dark Fantasy Sect, and Heavenly Demon Island. These 3 sects were all part of the 10 great sects of Starfields. They had deep foundations and countless masters, so it was understandable that they could control the 3 ancient transmission arrays. After Zhuowen found the ancient transmission array controlled by High Heaven Sect, he flew straight towards the direction marked on the star map. High Heaven Sect's ancient transmission array was built on this continent, in the High Heaven Square inside High Heaven Sect. It had to be mentioned that rogue cultivators who were not disciples of High Heaven Sect had to pay 10,000 divine stones to enter High Heaven Square. Although Zhuowen had a lot of divine stones on him, he still felt that the toll was a bit too expensive. One had to know that there were so many people coming and going in High Heaven Square every day, and each person had to pay 10,000 divine stones. In just one day, High Heaven Sect would make a lot of money just from the toll alone. The ancient transmission array was located in the center of High Heaven Square, but the flow of people around it was much smaller. Most of those who entered the ancient transmission array were disciples wearing High Heaven Sect robes. The rogue cultivators who entered here were not qualified to use this ancient transmission array at all. High Heaven Square did not only have ancient transmission arrays, otherwise, it would be impossible to attract so many foreign cultivators here. High Heaven Square was very large, and there were many stalls and cultivators who set up shops here. Most of the cultivators who entered High Heaven Square were here to buy things or set up stalls to sell things. Zhuowen passed through the crowd and finally arrived in front of the ancient transmission array. Next to the ancient transmission array, a bald old man sat cross-legged. In front of Zhuowen, 5 young men wearing High Heaven Sect robes were waiting with jade tokens in their hands. "Which sect are you a disciple of?" A big-eyed female cultivator standing in front of Zhuowen curiously looked at Zhuowen behind her and asked. As soon as the big-eyed female cultivator said this, the other disciples also looked at Zhuowen. Obviously, Zhuowen's attire really made him look like a rogue cultivator. How could an ordinary rogue cultivator be qualified to enter the ancient transmission array? "I'm just a rogue cultivator," Zhuowen said indifferently. "Just a rogue cultivator? Then what are you doing here? You rogue cultivators are not qualified to use the ancient transmission array," the big-eyed female cultivator said with some disdain. The other cultivators also shook their heads and no longer paid attention to Zhuowen. Zhuowen did not answer and silently waited for the line. Seeing that Zhuowen did not answer, the big-eyed female cultivator also turned her head away in boredom. After the bald old man checked the transmission tokens of these cultivators, he let them enter the ancient transmission array. "You also want to use the ancient transmission array?" The bald old man glanced at Zhuowen indifferently. Zhuowen cupped his fists, took out the token that Yin Bingyun gave him, and handed it to the bald old man. Although Ren Yong'an said that this transmission token was no longer suitable for the current ancient transmission array, Zhuowen still wanted to give it a try. Otherwise, he would not be satisfied. "Heh! This transmission token is a model from tens of thousands of years ago. You actually have this kind of transmission token?" The bald old man took the transmission token and exclaimed softly. Zhuowen smiled and said, "This one's ancestor was a disciple of one of the Starfield's 100 great sects, but later on, the younger generation failed to live up to expectations and failed to enter one of the 100 great sects, so this transmission token was passed down from generation to generation." The bald old man nodded, then threw the transmission token to Zhuowen and said, "The array engraved on your transmission token is too low in compatibility with the current ancient transmission array, so it cannot be used." After putting away the transmission token, Zhuowen's eyes dimmed. He cupped his fists towards the bald old man and left. However, before he left, the bald old man muttered in a low voice, "The transmission token is no longer as strict as it was in the past. If you have enough divine stones and reliable channels, you can still buy one." Zhuowen was stunned. He cupped his fists towards the bald old man again. He knew that the bald old man had done this on purpose to remind him. "It seems that I have to think of a way to get a transmission token, but if I want to get an ownerless transmission token, I'm afraid that it will be quite difficult." Zhuowen frowned slightly. As he walked, he thought about how to get a transmission token. Suddenly, a fragrant wind assaulted his nostrils. Then, a hand grabbed his right arm and brought him to the entrance of an alley. "Brother Zhuo, I am Yun Chuyu. I am not an enemy." A sound transmission drilled into Zhuowen's soul. Zhuowen, who was about to resist, suddenly stopped and allowed Yun Chuyu to bring him into the alley. After entering the dark alley, Yun Chuyu took off her veil, revealing her beautiful face. She looked at Zhuowen with reddened eyes. "Miss Yun, so you are fine. Where is Xiao Tong?" Zhuowen looked at Yun Chuyu in surprise. Yun Chuyu's eyes became even redder. She choked out, "Xiao Tong is dead. Everyone in the Creep Myrtle sect is dead." When she said this, Yun Chuyu could not help but lean on Zhuowen's shoulder. She cried bitterly and sadly. Zhuowen silently looked at the woman crying on his shoulder. He sighed softly but did not move his shoulder away. The Creep Myrtle sect was where Yun Chuyu belonged. It was gone just like that. As a woman, she must have a lot of grievances and sadness bottled up in her heart. Chapter 1985. Towards Big Brother Zhuo, "I'm sorry. I lost my composure just now." Yun Chuyu wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and raised her head, looking at Zhuowen with reddened cheeks. When she saw Zhuowen just now, she thought of the annihilated Creep Myrtle sect. A myriad of emotions welled up in her heart, and she could not help but cry out loud. Now that she thought about it, Yun Chuyu only felt exceptionally ashamed. She did not even dare to raise her head to look at Zhuowen. Zhuowen naturally saw Yun Chuyu's awkwardness and changed the topic. "Miss Yun, how did you escape later? The last time I advanced to True God, I came out of the galaxy's source space and discovered that the Creep Myrtle sect had been annihilated." Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes showed signs of tears again. She sighed softly. "I came out earlier than you. When I returned to the Creep Myrtle sect, my aunt took the opportunity to order me to another galaxy to handle some matters. However, when I returned to the Creep Myrtle sect, I only found the letter my aunt left for me. The Creep Myrtle sect had already been annihilated. From my aunt's letter, I learned that the one who annihilated the Creep Myrtle sect was Lei Qi, so I entered Dongyu." Zhuowen shook his head and said, "Miss Yun, you can't be rash. Lei Qi is an expert above the 5th step of the Void Sky Realm. The current you and I cannot fight against Lei Qi at all. Especially you. You are the last hope of the Creep Myrtle sect." Yun Chuyu regained her composure and said, "Big Brother Zhuo, I know. Before I have enough strength, I will not go looking for Lei Qi." Zhuowen nodded. He hesitated for a moment before continuing, "I think you know Lei Qi's goal. Currently, your aunt's life is not in danger. However, she only has 100 years left." Yun Chuyu looked at Zhuowen and pleaded, "Big Brother Zhuo, you are so powerful. If there is anyone who can save my aunt, it is only you." Zhuowen fell silent. He said in a low voice, "Miss Yun, I still don't have such strength at the moment. Moreover, the Dim Mirage sect is too powerful. Even if I am not weaker than Lei Qi, I'm afraid that it will be difficult to rescue Sect Master Yin from the Dim Mirage sect." Yun Chuyu said firmly, "Big Brother Zhuo, your talent and strength are very strong. As long as you can enter the legendary Tower of Hanover, I know that you will definitely undergo a complete transformation. When that time comes, I believe that you will have the strength to save my aunt. Tower of Hanoi? Zhuowen was surprised. He naturally knew about the Tower of Hanoi. It was a mysterious structure built by the Lord of the Great Brahma domain, Great Brahma. It was said that only 2 people had ever entered the tower. One was Purple Star Sovereign, and the other was Great Brahma. Yes. Big Brother Zhuo, the Tower of Hanoi is very miraculous. Back then, the Crepe Myrtle sect's Crepe Myrtle Star suppressed everyone and entered the Tower of Hanoi. If it weren't for the Crepe Myrtle Star's painstaking pursuit of the extreme path realm, he would have long been a figure at the peak of the heaven domain, Yun Chuyu said respectfully. Could it be that there is something special about the Tower of Hanoi? Zhuowen asked. Yun Chuyu said, Big Brother Zhuo, the Tower of Hanoi is a place that all cultivators in the Great Brahma domain dream of entering. Back then, Purple Star Sovereign came out of the Tower of Hanoi and shocked everyone. He became the true god of extreme thunder and extreme fire at the same time and survived 19 wind disasters. He almost reached the peak of the true god realm. At that time, Purple Star Sovereign was definitely an influential figure of his time. Many void overlords were wary of him because he entered the Tower of Hanoi. Although many cultivators have different opinions about the Tower of Hanoi, the consensus is that the Tower of Hanoi has the miraculous effect of being reborn. During Purple Star Sovereign's time, Great Brahma opened the Tower of Hanoi once, and only Purple Star Sovereign successfully entered that time. This time, Great Brahma once again announced that the Tower of Hanoi will be opened again. At this point, Yun Chuyu's body trembled with excitement. She knew very well that this was a chance for the Crepe Myrtle sect to rise again. Back then, Purple Star Sovereign relied on the Tower of Hanoi to rise to power, and the Crepe Myrtle sect became famous in that era. Unfortunately, Purple Star Sovereign's good days did not last long. 500 years after he left the Tower of Hanoi, the 20th wind disaster descended upon the starry sky. As for the Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch, there was no news of him after the 20th wind disaster. He had disappeared without a trace ever since. Big Brother Zhuo, your strength and talent are definitely more terrifying than any of the geniuses I've seen. Perhaps you can enter the Tower of Hanoi and be reborn, becoming the strongest of your generation. Yun Chuyu looked at Zhuo Wen excitedly. Zhuo Wen's eyes flashed. After Yun Chuyu's introduction, he had a better understanding of the Tower of Hanoi. In particular, this Tower of Hanoi could actually allow a cultivator to be reborn. This effect was so abnormal that even Zhuo Wen was a little tempted. How do I qualify to enter the Tower of Hanoi? Zhuo Wen asked curiously. Yun Chuyu said, the Galactic Grand Tournament this time is a selection of the strongest. Only by standing out in the Galactic Grand Tournament can you qualify to enter the Tower of Hanoi. I see. Zhuo Wen nodded. It seemed that he really did need to participate in this Galactic Grand Tournament. Currently, the teleportation token that Yin Bingyun gave him could not be used. He had to get a new one in this star field. However, he was now a rogue cultivator with no background. It was too difficult for him to get a teleportation token. However, if Zhuo Wen stood out in the Galactic Grand Tournament, all the major forces in the starfield would fight for him. When that time came, his value would multiply, and it would be much easier to get a teleportation token than it was now. Big Brother Zhuo, before the Galactic Grand Tournament, Dongyu still has a warm-up selection. This selection is mainly to screen out the cultivators from the galaxies outside the starfield. Some cultivators who want to take advantage of the situation will also be eliminated in the warm-up selection, Yun Chuyu said. Cultivators who want to take advantage of the situation? Zhuo Wen asked in surprise. Yun Chuyu explained, not only will the galaxies outside the starfield participate in this Galactic Grand Tournament, but the cultivators inside the starfield will also participate. Even the disciples of the 10 great sects will participate. Because this tournament is related to the opening of the Tower of Hanoi, all the forces attach great importance to it. However, there is a rule in the Tower of Hanoi. That is, cultivators over 3,000 years old are not qualified to enter. Therefore, the candidates for this Galactic Grand Tournament must be under 3,000 years old. Otherwise, they will be kicked out of the starfield. Zhuo Wen nodded and said in a deep voice, I see. Suddenly, Zhuo Wen remembered the recommendation letter that Ren Yonggan gave him. Zhuo Wen really had no interest in participating in the warm-up selection. If he had taken the recommendation letter and joined the High Heavens sect, it should not be so troublesome. Miss Yun, come with me. Perhaps we have a more convenient way to participate in the Galactic Grand Tournament. Dongyu is also the territory of the Dark Mirage sect. I'm afraid we can't participate in the warm-up selection as disciples of the Creep Myrtle sect. Otherwise, our identities will be exposed. As Zhuo Wen spoke, he walked towards the High Heavens sect in front of the High Heaven Square. Yun Chuyu was startled. She had considered what Zhuo Wen said before, but other than that, she did not have any better ideas. Lei Qi was a high-level member of the Dark Mirage sect, so she felt that Lei Qi would not pay attention to the warm-up selection. If she had not met Zhuo Wen today, she had planned to participate in the warm-up selection and obtain the qualifications to enter Dongyu to participate in the Galactic Grand Tournament. Big brother Zhuo, that's the High Heaven sect. What are you going there for? Yun Chuyu quickly noticed the direction Zhuo Wen was heading in. Her beautiful eyes were startled, and she could not help but follow him. Follow me and you'll know, Zhuo Wen said as he led Yun Chuyu to the entrance of the High Heaven sect. High Heaven sect was surrounded by an extremely powerful spirit array. This spirit array was so complex that even Zhuo Wen could not understand it. It was obvious that the one who arranged this spirit array was a high-level array master. At this moment, the two High Heaven sect disciples at the entrance also saw Zhuo Wen and Yun Chuyu and immediately stopped them. Two guests, this is the inner area of the High Heaven sect. Please wait. As the two disciples spoke, they glanced at Yun Chuyu behind Zhuo Wen. Although Yun Chuyu was wearing a veil, one could still see her beautiful outline through it. The two disciples were even a little entranced by her beauty, and only after Zhuo Wen took out the recommendation letter did the two of them react. This is the recommendation letter from Ren Yonggan of the High Heaven Pavilion on the Eastern Receiving Heaven Stone. You'll know once you present it, Zhuo Wen said lightly. One of the disciples took the recommendation letter and found that it was engraved with the High Heaven sect's seal. His gaze immediately became much more cautious. Wait here, I'll bring it up and ask. After saying so, the disciple left. After a while, the disciple came back with an old-fashioned old man. Seeing the respectful look on the disciple's face, it was obvious that this old-fashioned old man's status in High Heaven sect was not low. Elder Bai, the one who brought the recommendation letter is this person, the disciple said respectfully. The old-fashioned old man nodded before turning to Zhuo Wen and asking, You're Long Wen? That's me, Zhuo Wen said politely. The old-fashioned old man coldly snorted and said, You're quite bold, daring to tear down the Dark Illusion Pavilion as soon as you arrived at the Receiving Heaven Stone. How audacious and arrogant. Zhuo Wen frowned slightly. What was the meaning of this old-fashioned old man scolding him as soon as he arrived? What did the destruction of the Dark Illusion Pavilion have to do with their High Heaven sect? Since you were recommended by Ren Yonggan, I'll give you a chance. Enter my High Heaven sect and work as a servant for 10 years. When the time comes, I'll promote you to an official disciple, the old-fashioned old man said indifferently. Zhuo Wen's eyes narrowed as he stared at the old-fashioned old man and said, A servant disciple? I remember that the recommendation letter was from Ren Yonggan. He intended to recommend me to become an inner sect disciple of High Heaven sect, yet you want me to be a servant disciple for 10 years? The old-fashioned old man sneered at Zhuo Wen and said, What's wrong? You don't want to? Since you don't want to, scram for me. Who does Ren Yonggan think he is? What qualifications does he have to recommend an inner sect disciple to the sect? How laughable. Zhuo Wen stared at the old-fashioned old man quietly. He could tell that this old-fashioned old man didn't like Ren Yonggan very much. It seemed that he was a little unlucky this time. His recommendation letter had probably fallen into the hands of Ren Yong'an's enemy. Zhuo Wen knew very well that where there were people, there would be conflicts. Even a big sect like High Heaven sect naturally had its own grievances. Chapter 1986. Mo Yu Villa. In that case, I'll take my leave. Zhuoan cupped his fists and left High Heaven sect with Yun Chuyu. Ren Yonggan had clearly stated in his recommendation letter that he intended to recommend Zhuoan as an inner sect disciple, but this person actually wanted him to be a servant disciple for 10 years. Unless there was something wrong with Zhuoan's head, he would never agree to such a condition. Looking at the departing Zhuo Wen and Yun Chuyu, the old-fashioned old man sneered and immediately re-entered High Heaven sect. Big brother Zhuo, that person is deliberately making things difficult for you, right? Yun Chuyu was smart enough to notice some clues. Zhuoan nodded and said, that person should be enemies with the person who gave me the recommendation letter, so he deliberately made things difficult for me. Yun Chuyu frowned slightly and said, right now, we can only participate in the preliminary selection in the name of Creep Myrtle sect. Auntie already signed us up, so, however, Zhuowen shook his head and said, that's too dangerous. Since Sect Master Yin has been captured by Lei Qi, and Sect Master Yin has placed an important item on me, Lei Qi will not let this matter rest. He will definitely search everywhere for news about me. Once we participate in the preliminary selection in the name of Creep Myrtle sect, won't we be telling Lei Qi that we are here? After speaking, Zhuowen also briefly told Yun Chuyu about how he had been chased down by Lei Qi's subordinates. Yun Chuyu's pretty face turned pale, and she said in a panic, then what should we do? If we don't participate in the preliminary selection, we won't be qualified to participate in the interstellar tournament. Zhuowen smiled slightly and said, High Heaven sect is not the only great force in Dongyu. There are all kinds of great forces, large and small. Generally, the great forces in the starfield have a certain number of spots to participate in the interstellar tournament. Although Zhuowen had just arrived in Dongyu, he had learned a lot about Dongyu from High Heaven Pavilion's Ren Yonggan on the receiving Heaven Stone, including the distribution of forces in Dongyu. With so many great forces in Dongyu, there were naturally some that were strong and some that were weak. The strong forces like Dark Mirage Sect, High Heaven Sect, and Heavenly Demon Island were the three most terrifying forces, while the weak forces were unknown and unknown. This time, Zhuowen went to a force that was ranked at the bottom of the Dongyu continent. This faction was called Moyu Mountain Villa. It was a faction that not many cultivators in Dongyu had heard of. This faction was so poor that they could only use the terrain to develop tourism to support the villa's expenses. Fortunately, the Moyu Mountain Villa had a lot of wonderful scenery. Coupled with some gimmicks, it attracted some cultivators who liked to flaunt their culture to come and enjoy the scenery. Moyu Villa also had a star system, but the number of life planets in Moyu Villa's star system was pitifully small. Counting carefully, there were only a few thousand life planets. It was far worse than the average star system. It was no wonder Moyu Villa had declined so much. It can be said that the Moyu Villa was even more destitute than the Creep Myrtle sect. If the Moyu Villa was not located in a star field, it would have long been swallowed up by other powerful galaxies. Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu arrived at the entrance of Moyu Villa. Immediately, a cultivator in a green robe came up to them with a warm smile on his face. Are the two of you here to enjoy the scenery? Entering our Moyu Villa only costs 100 divine stones for a day's tour. If you want to tour for a few more days, you only need to pay the corresponding amount of divine stones. Of course, if the two of you want to stay here for a month, there's also a discount in terms of divine stones, the green-robed cultivator said with a smile. Zhuowen looked at the green-robed cultivator in front of him speechlessly. This cultivator's cultivation was not high, only about the late heavenly god realm. However, his attitude was like that of a scalper who wandered around tourist attractions in his previous life. Zhuowen shook his head and said, Brother, I have something important to discuss with your villa master. Tell your villa master that if he succeeds in negotiating with me this time, perhaps Moyu Villa will be able to rise once more. The smile on the green-robed cultivator's face froze. He looked at Zhuowen from head to toe, his eyes full of doubt. Wait, I'll go ask our villa master. Although the green-robed cultivator did not believe Zhuowen's words, his attitude did not become bad. After all, the two people in front of him were true gods. Their words should not be without evidence. Of course, the green-robed cultivator did not believe the nonsense of Moyu Villa. He went to ask their villa master mainly because he was not strong enough and did not dare to become hostile in front of Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu. After a while, the green-robed cultivator came out with a middle-aged man with a mustache. This man with a mustache was in high spirits. He walked with a majestic gait and his body was robust. With one look, one could tell that he was not simple. True God, 3 disasters. Zhuowen looked at the man with a mustache and muttered in his heart. He knew that this man with a mustache should be the villa master of Mo Yu Villa. However, the villa master's cultivation was not high. Although he could feel that the aura of wind disaster on this person was very strong, and he had probably survived more than 10 wind disasters, the gap between him and a void sky expert was not small. It was no wonder that Mo Yu Villa had declined. It was mainly because they did not have any high-level experts and could not support such a large force like Mo Yu Villa. The middle-aged man sized up Zhuowen and said, "Are you the one who wants to talk to me about something that is related to the rise of Mo Yu Villa?" "Yes. I wonder if the villa master can talk to me in private," Zhuowen said indifferently. The middle-aged man sized up Zhuowen seriously. He realized that he could not see through the aura on Zhuowen's body. The disdain in his heart immediately disappeared and he said in a deep voice, "Friend, come with me." As he spoke, the middle-aged man led Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu into a palace in the depths of the villa. After sitting down in the palace, the middle-aged man's eyes flashed and he said in a deep voice, "I am the villa master of Mo Yu Villa, Mo Lan. What do you want to talk to me about? Why do you say that you can help Mo Yu Villa rise?" At first, Mo Lan did not believe Zhuowen's words, but when he realized that he could not see through Zhuowen, he chose to believe him. He wanted to see what this young man in front of him wanted to talk to him about. "Give us 2 spots for Mo Yu Villa's interstellar tournament, and we can help Mo Yu Villa rise to the top 100 in the interstellar tournament," Zhuowen said indifferently. Mo Lan was stunned, and the veins on his forehead bulged. He suppressed his anger and glared at Zhuowen, saying, "Is this what you want to talk about? You came to Mo Yu Villa to ask for a spot, and you are so arrogant. Do you really think that Mo Yu Villa is easy to bully?" However, before Mo Lan could finish his words, he stared blankly at the wooden barrel in front of Zhuowen. This aura. Could it be fire spirit juice? Mo Lan licked his lips and looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. Although fire spirit juice was not rare in the starfield, its price was extremely high. Mo Yu Villa also had some, but their reserves were pitifully small. However, the young man in front of him actually took out an entire barrel, and the fire spirit juice inside was very expensive. Mo Yu Villa was currently in dire straits. If they had to buy this barrel of fire spirit juice, it would be a huge blow to their villa. Moreover, Mo Lan also knew that since this person could easily take out a barrel of fire spirit juice, he must have even more on him. Sure enough, before Mo Lan's attention could move away from the barrel of fire spirit juice, Zhuowen took out another 4 barrels. Mo Lan was so excited that he almost bit his tongue. He took a deep breath and calmed the restlessness in his heart. Even Yun Chuyu looked at Zhuowen in surprise. She did not expect Zhuowen to be so rich that he actually had so much fire spirit juice on him. "Villa Master Mo, what do you think?" Zhuowen smiled faintly. Mo Lan's eyes flickered as he looked deeply at Zhuowen. If it were not for the fact that he could not see through Zhuowen, he might have used force to snatch the barrels. However, Zhuowen's aura was faintly discernible, and he could not determine this person at all. Mo Yu Villa only has 3 spots, and all 3 spots have already been chosen. "I'm afraid this will not be easy," Mo Lan said hesitantly. Zhuowen's eyes were indifferent. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out another 5 barrels of fire spirit juice and said, "I believe Villa Master Mo should know how to weigh the pros and cons, right?" Mo Lan's breathing quickened as he looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. He never thought that the latter would be able to take out another 5 barrels of fire spirit juice. After calming down, Mo Lan said in a deep voice, "Deal. In the name of Mo Yu Villa's Villa Master, I will give you 2 of our 3 spots." Zhuowen nodded and kept the 10 buckets of fire spirit juice. He said, "Then I'll have to ask Manor Lord Mo to help us arrange our accommodations first. Once the 2 quotas are given to us, this Zhuo will naturally hand over the fire spirit juice to Manor Lord." Mo Lan reluctantly looked at the 10 barrels of fire spirit juice that Zhuoan had put away. He could only nod and say, "Friend, don't worry. Since I, Mo Lan, have spoken, I will naturally keep my word. Men, arrange a first-class room for these 2 distinguished guests." After arranging for Zhuoan and Yun Chuyu to leave, Mo Lan's eyes were slightly gloomy and hesitant. He softly muttered, "I can only cancel Mo Hong and Mo Jun's spots." The next day, in a luxurious house in Mo Yu Villa, a young man with a sharp nose looked at the old servant in front of him with a gloomy expression and shouted, "What did you say?" "Villa Master wants to cancel my spot in the interstellar tournament." The old servant lowered his head and said submissively, "Young Master Hong, these are Villa Master's original words. This little one only just found out." Scram! The young man was unable to restrain his anger. He kicked the old servant, sending him flying and crashing into the wall. He said in a low voice, "This is strange. Why would Villa Master want to cancel my spot? In Mo Yu Villa, other than Mo Jun and Mo Yang, who are stronger than me, the rest are either worse than me or are over 3,000 years old. Mo Hong, it seems that you have a lot of anger." A gloomy voice came from outside the house. Immediately, Mo Hong saw an extremely handsome young man walking in from the door. "Mo Jun, are you here to mock me? My spot was cancelled for no reason. Is this your doing?" Mo Hong said coldly. These 2 young men were 2 of Mo Yu Villa's 3 spots to participate in the interstellar tournament. The young man with a sharp nose was Mo Hong, and the handsome young man was Mo Jun. Chapter 1987. Yu Ian Mo Hong felt that something was amiss when he heard this, and he said in a low voice, "Both our quotas have been cancelled. This is too strange. What exactly happened?" Mo Jun revealed a pondering expression and said, "I heard that 2 uninvited guests came to the villa yesterday. Could it be that our quotas were suddenly cancelled because of them? It's possible. Let's go ask the villa master," Mo Hong said in a low voice. Mo Jun nodded and said, "Come, let's go together. If the villa master doesn't give us a satisfactory answer, we'll absolutely not give up." In the hall, Mo Lan looked at Mo Jun and Mo Hong and said with a slight headache, "I'm already aware of your situation. I've already given your quotas to the other 2. With their strength, it's more than enough to lead our Mo Yu Villa to a good ranking in the interstellar tournament." Mo Jun was unconvinced and said, "Villa Master, we can't believe your words alone. Unless those 2 people defeat us, I'll be the first to refuse to accept it." Mo Hong chimed in from the side, nodding repeatedly. Mo Lan rubbed his temples and was just about to refuse when a terrifying divine sense suddenly swept over and instantly locked onto the 3 of them in the hall. "I heard that the 2 of you refused to accept it. Sure, come to the house in the garden at the back of the mountain. I, Zhuoan, will be waiting there at any time." This divine sense came and went quickly. Mo Hong and Mo Jun, who were originally unconvinced, trembled. The 2 of them would never forget the fear they felt when that divine sense locked onto them. That divine sense was like the might of the heavens, and it suppressed them so much that they didn't dare move casually. Even Mo Lan was shocked. The moment that divine sense descended, even he felt his entire body stiffen. For a moment, Mo Lan was even more afraid of Zhuoan. At the same time, he was glad that he didn't use a forceful method. Mo Lan coughed lightly and pretended to be calm, and said, "Do the 2 of you still want to challenge that guest?" Mo Hong and Mo Jun looked at each other and shook their heads at the same time. After feeling that terrifying divine sense, how could they dare to challenge Zhuoan? Wouldn't that be courting death? Zhuoan withdrew his consciousness and calmly walked into the house. He knew that once his consciousness spread out, Mo Hong and Mo Jun would definitely not dare to challenge him. Zhuoan's spiritual soul had been tempered by the starry sky quenching stone, which made it far more powerful than the average cultivator. Even Mo Lan felt a trace of fear when she sensed his spiritual consciousness. This was the benefit of the starry sky quenching stone. Time flew by and more cultivators entered Dongyu. The preliminary selection was also in full swing. Many cultivators were eliminated in the selection, but there were also many who stood out in the selection and obtained the qualifications to enter Zhongyu to participate in the Galactic Grand Tournament. While the preliminary selection was underway, Another major event occurred in Dongyu. The Dark Illusion sect had issued a warrant for the arrest of an independent cultivator called Long Wen. It was said that this itinerant cultivator was so audacious that not only did he kill the Dark Illusion sect disciples guarding the entrance when he entered the Heaven-Receiving Rock, he even destroyed the Dark Illusion house on the Heaven-Receiving Rock in a fit of rage after he entered. As soon as the warrant was issued, it caused quite a stir in Dongyu. The Dark Illusion house had stood on the Heaven-Receiving Rock for many years, and no cultivator had ever dared to destroy it. This was a disguised provocation to the Dark Illusion sect. After the warrant was issued, the Dark Illusion sect sent out many cultivators to search for Long Wen, but there were no clues at all. Later, as the Galactic Grand Tournament approached, the Dark Illusion sect relaxed a lot about the warrant for Long Wen. Long Wen, who had caused a stir for a while, was gradually forgotten by many cultivators in Dongyu. Brother Zhuo, the Galactic Grand Tournament will begin in half a year. Manor Lord Mo asked me to prepare during this time. After a while, the three great sects of Dongyu will organize a group of cultivators to head to Zhongyu. Yun Chuyu's voice came from outside the door. Zhuoan opened his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Miss Yun, thank you for your hard work. I know about this. Is there anything else?" Yun Chuyu stood at the door, her beautiful eyes flickering. She said hesitantly, "Also, Manor Lord Mo seems to know about that Yu Iyun you mentioned last time." As soon as Yun Chuyu finished speaking, she saw Zhuowen's door suddenly open. "Manor Lord Mo knows. Then I'll go find him." After Zhuowen finished speaking, he excitedly left the place and walked quickly towards Molan's pavilion. Looking at Zhuowen's hurried figure, Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes dimmed. Yu Iyun was obviously a woman's name. Seeing that Zhuowen cared so much about Yu Iyun, Yun Chuyu felt a little sour in her heart. "Manor Lord Mo, do you know Yu Iyun?" In the hall, Zhuowen sat across from Molan and asked in a deep voice. Molan said rather politely, "You mean Yu Iyun? I do know this woman. She is the Dao companion of the White Moon sect's sect master, Song Zhe. She once came to my Mo Yu villa with Song Zhe to enjoy the scenery. Ever since Zhuowen used his divine sense to intimidate Mo Hong and Mo Jun, Mo Lan had been unusually polite to Zhuowen, faintly treating Zhuowen as a distinguished guest." "Dao companion?" Zhuowen frowned. According to Fan Yang's letter, Yu Iyun was clearly Fan Yang's Dao companion. How did she become Song Zhe's Dao companion? Also, Yu Iyun was taken away by a Daoist nun. Was that Daoist nun also from the White Moon sect? "Manor Lord Mo, does the White Moon sect have a cultivator dressed as a Daoist nun?" Zhuowen asked again. "A Daoist nun? Are you talking about the previous sect master?" The previous sect master was dressed as a Daoist nun, but she has already abdicated and left the White Moon sect, passing the position to the current Song Zhe, Molan said. Zhuowen nodded. He was now certain that the White Moon sect's Yu Iyun was the Yu Iyun he was looking for. Fan Yang risked his life to come to Dongyu just to find Yu Iyun, but Yu Iyun actually found a new Dao companion in the White Moon sect. She didn't even think of leaving Dongyu to find Fan Yang. Zhuowen's heart burned with anger. He felt that Fan Yang's infatuation with Yu Iyun was not worth it. "I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first." After saying that, Zhuowen left the hall, took out a flying ship, and left Mo Yu villa. Yun Chuyu silently followed behind Zhuowen. She had heard the conversation between Zhuowen and Mo Lan just now. She could feel the anger on Zhuowen's face, especially when she thought about how Zhuowen was angry for another woman. Yun Chuyu felt very uncomfortable. She really wanted to see what kind of peerless beauty Yu Iyun was that could make Zhuowen lose his composure. In fact, even Yun Chuyu herself could not explain why she felt a sense of comparison with Yu Iyun, but she just felt uncomfortable in her heart. The White Moon sect wasn't far from Mo Yu villa, and it was also in a region on the edge of Dongyu. Although the White Moon sect's situation was much better than Mo Yu villa's, it was still a small faction on the edge of Dongyu and was extremely inconspicuous. Zhuowen stopped not far from the White Moon sect. He turned around and looked at Yun Chuyu, who was following behind him, and said, "Miss Yun, why are you following me?" Yun Chuyu's pretty face blushed slightly, and she curled her lips and said, "I'm just curious, so can't I come to take a look? Also, Don't call me Miss Yoon in the future. Just call me Chuyu. Zhuowen was stunned, but he nodded and said, if that's the case, then come on up. Yoon Chuyu nodded lightly and landed beside Zhuowen. She stood next to Zhuowen, almost sticking to him. Zhuowen didn't think too much about it. He looked at the white moon sect in front of him, and just as he was about to enter, a stream of light came from the starry sky in front of the white moon sect. The stream of light faded away, revealing two figures. These two figures were a man and a woman. The man was about 50 years old, and his face was full of holes. It could be said that his appearance was really unflattering. As for the young woman next to the man, she had a pretty face and good looks. She wasn't bad at all. However, when the man and woman stood together, it was like a contrast between a beauty and a beast. It was really a little out of place. The man and woman also noticed Zhuowen and Yoon Chuyu standing at the entrance of the White Moon sect, and they looked at the two of them in surprise. The middle-aged man frowned slightly. He noticed that the young man in front of him was looking at his companion in an extremely presumptuous manner. This made him extremely unhappy, and he said coldly, "Friend, why have you come to my White Moon sect?" Zhuowen completely ignored the middle-aged man. The strength of the White Moon sect's leader was around that of true God 3 disasters. Judging from his aura, he should be slightly stronger than the villa master of Moyua Villa, Mo Lan. However, Zhuowen didn't take him seriously at all. Zhuowen's gaze landed on the young woman next to the middle-aged man. He suppressed his anger and said, "You're Yu Iyun?" Yu Iyun's beautiful eyes frowned slightly. She stared at the angry young man in front of her, and she was rather puzzled. As far as she could remember, she didn't know the young man in front of her at all. Why did the young man look so angry when he saw her? Yoon Chuyu also saw Zhuowen's strange behavior, and the jealousy in her heart grew even stronger. She looked at Yu Iyun in front of her, gritted her teeth, and gently removed the veil on her face. Then, she wrapped her arms around Zhuowen and said softly, "Big brother Zhuo, what's so good about this woman? She's so heartless. You don't have to be conflicted and angry over her. You still have me." The moment Yoon Chuyu removed her veil, the ugly middle-aged man's eyes revealed a look of amazement. He stared straight at Yoon Chuyu, and he couldn't help but gulp. Although most female cultivators would become more and more beautiful after cultivating, Yoon Chuyu was not just an ordinary beauty. She was a peerless beauty, the kind that would take people's breath away at first sight. Even Yu Iyun, who was next to the middle-aged man, revealed a look of amazement when she saw Yoon Chuyu remove her veil. Yoon Chuyu was indeed too beautiful. The middle-aged man secretly compared Yoon Chuyu to Yu Iyun, and he realized that Yu Iyun could not be compared to Yoon Chuyu at all. Suddenly, his feelings for Yu Iyun were not as strong as before. Yu Iyun also felt the change in the middle-aged man's attitude, and her face turned slightly pale. It was not easy for her to get close to Songja, and that was why she had her current status in the White Moon sect. She did not want to lose this. "Who are you?" "I don't know you," Yu Iyun shouted with a gloomy face. Zhuowen was a little surprised that Yoon Chuyu had taken the initiative to hug him. At that moment, Yoon Chuyu's face was very red, and her delicate body was weak. However, she stubbornly refused to let go. She did not want to lose face in front of Yu Iyun. Chapter 1988. Lei Chi Yu Iyun did not recognize Zhuowen and Yoon Chuyu, nor did she know why they were standing in front of her. However, when Zhuowen took out the coffin, her body trembled. Her beautiful eyes stared at Fan Yang, who was lying quietly in the coffin. A line of clear tears fell from the corner of Yu Iyun's eyes. She took a step forward and landed in front of the coffin. Choking with sobs, she said, "What happened to Fan Yang? In order to find you, he entered the heaven-receiving stone, but he accidentally died. Ever since you were taken away by the Daoist nun, Fan Yang has been cultivating diligently and constantly asking for news about you. Unfortunately, you ended up becoming someone else's Daoist companion." Zhuowen's gaze was cold. At the same time, he took out a jade box and threw it to Yu Iyun. He said indifferently, "This is Fan Yang's token of love. After you were brought to Dongyu, you never thought of looking for Fan Yang and even became his Daoist companion. I think it's not worth it for Fan Yang to do this for you." "No, I did look for Fan Yang, but my master said that Fan Yang was already dead. He even brought Fan Yang's clothes. I really didn't know that Fan Yang was still alive. Yu Iyun choked with sobs. She cried very sadly. Zhuowen quietly stared at Yu Iyun. He could see that Yu Iyun's sadness did not seem to be fake. Perhaps there was something hidden here. Yun Chuyu, who was standing beside Zhuowen, sheepishly withdrew her hand. She also realized that she seemed to have misunderstood something. When she remembered that she had actually taken the initiative to hug Zhuowen's arm, Yun Chuyu's pretty face flushed red like a ripe apple. She stole a glance at Zhuowen and found that he did not notice her. Yun Chuyu secretly sighed in relief. "Who are you?" Songzhe frowned slightly and looked at Zhuowen with murderous intent in his eyes. He had learned about Yu Iyun's past. He had thought that Yu Iyun had let go of the past, but he did not expect that this young man in front of him would intrude into their lives. Zhuowen ignored Songzhe. Instead, he looked at Yu Iyun and said, "If you still love Brother Fan, I know what you should do. As for the White Moon cult, I will help you deal with it." Yu Iyun had already calmed down. She wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes and bowed to Zhuowen. Then, she turned to look at Songzhe and translation. "Songzhe and..." She coldly said, Songzhe, did you know the truth when my master's daoists?" Songzhe frowned slightly and said coldly, "Iyun, what do you mean by this? How dare you speak to me? As you translation, you translation, you translation, translation, you translation of translation as." Unfortunately, the moment Songzhe dashed out, 4 black lights shot out and pierced through Songzhe's 4 limbs. "Ah!" Songzhe screamed as he was pinned to the void by the 4 black rays. Only then did he realize that the 4 black rays were 4 small black swords, and no matter how hard he struggled, he could not break free from the 4 small swords' confinement. At this moment, Songzhe's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. He looked at Zhuowen in horror. He knew that the young man in front of him was much stronger than him. Just as Songzhe was about to speak, a golden ray shot out and drilled into the space between Songzhe's eyebrows. The 4 small swords returned to the spirit ring, and the soul-absorbing godly needle also flew out from between Songzhe's eyebrows and entered between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Songzhe had completely turned into a corpse. "Fan Yang's wish was to find you. I hope you won't disappoint him." Zhuowen looked at Yu Iyun deeply, then left with Yun Chuyu. Zhuowen left a divine sense on the coffin. This divine sense was very well hidden, and Yu Iyun definitely would not be able to discover it. If Zhuowen found out that Yu Iyun had any ill intentions or was pretending, Zhuowen would use that divine sense to attack Yu Iyun and kill Yu Iyun immediately. Fortunately, Yu Iyun did care about their old friendship. From then on, she silently guarded Fan Yang's coffin and lived in seclusion. After dealing with Fan Yang's matter, Zhuowen returned to Mo Yu Villa to cultivate in seclusion for another 3 months. During this period of time, Zhuowen did not cultivate, but studied the Array Dao. Zhuowen had the cultivation experiences of several god formation masters. Zhuowen studied them over and over again and tried again. Finally, he successfully became a god formation master. Under Zhuowen's research, the devouring curse that he cultivated was also able to create a new forbidden technique. This technique was named the Devouring Curse by Zhuowen. Although Zhuowen was currently only a level 1 divine master, Zhuowen's understanding of Array Dao was comparable to that of a level 3 divine master. In addition to his powerful spirit, he could set up a level 3 Array Dao. After Zhuowen became a god Array Dao master, the Nebula tournament was approaching. On this day, Mo Lan brought Zhuowen, Yun Chuyu, and Mo Yang to the core area of Dongyu. There was a huge square there called Dongyu Square. The interstellar tournament would be held in Zhongyu, and the Lord of the Heavenly Region, Lord Brahma, would send 4 experts to the east, west, south, and north regions to pick up the cultivators who were going to the interstellar tournament. When Mo Lan led Zhuowen's group of 3 into Dongyu Plaza, the place was already packed with people. "There are so many people," Yun Chuyu said with a frown. "Haha. The interstellar tournament is the most prosperous event in the heavenly region. Over the years, there has always been an endless stream of people. Moreover, this tournament is related to the opening of the Tower of Hanno, so this year's interstellar tournament is much more lively than the previous ones. The competition is also much more intense. Mo Lan laughed. Mo Yang looked at Zhuowen with fear and said in a deep voice, "Villa Master, this year's competition is so intense. It's not a good thing for our Mo Yu villa." "That's not necessarily true." Mo Lan looked at Zhuowen and said confidently. He had witnessed Zhuowen's strength with his own eyes. He believed that even if Mo Yu villa couldn't enter the top 100 this time, they would still be able to achieve a better result than the previous years. At that time, Mo Yu villa would also be able to receive more resources than now. However, Mo Yang shook his head. He knew that the villa master had high hopes for Zhuowen. Although he knew that Zhuowen's strength was indeed extraordinary, he was only a one-disaster true god. He wasn't qualified to be compared with the geniuses of the starfield. He didn't think that this person could help their Mo Yu villa improve their ranking. On the contrary, he was unhappy that Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu had snatched Mo Hong and Mo Jun's spots, so he didn't treat Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu well. "Look, High Heaven Sect's senior brother Ling Zhuo is here." Suddenly, there was an uproar as everyone's eyes fell on a certain direction. There, a huge streak of light swept over. The rainbow light faded away, revealing more than 20 figures. The one in the lead was a handsome young man dressed in white. 2 old men followed beside the young man like his bodyguards. Zhuowen even saw the old man who had rejected him from joining High Heaven Sect. This Ling Zhuo is the strongest disciple of High Heaven Sect's 3rd generation. He has only cultivated for a little over 2,000 years, but his cultivation has already reached the 1st step Void Sky Realm. "It is said that he is not far from the 2nd step Void Sky Realm," Mo Lan said enviously. Zhuowen glanced at Ling Zhuo. Ling Zhuo's aura was indeed powerful. Although he was only at the 1st step Void Sky Realm, he felt that this person was much stronger than ordinary 1st step Void Sky Realm cultivators. Wu Han of Jianghong Trading Company was also a 1st step Void Sky Realm cultivator, but compared to Ling Zhuo, there was a gap. Not long after Ling Zhuo's arrival, a demonic cloud suddenly rushed over, and Dongyu Square immediately fell into darkness. "It's the people of Heavenly Demon Island. That's Witch Yushan. She is a ruthless person who eats people without spitting out their bones. You must not provoke her." When the demonic cloud faded away and revealed a group of figures, everyone in the square revealed a look of dread. This group of people was dressed in grey robes and had demon chi lingering around their bodies. The woman in the lead had an extremely dense demon chi. This woman had a head full of black hair, and her lips were a strange black color. Her skin was as white as snow, and she had a beautiful appearance. However, she had a demonic charm. This Witch Yushan must not be provoked casually. It is said that anyone who is targeted by Yushan will die without a doubt. This woman is vicious and merciless. She will not shrink from any crime. Her strength is even more terrifying than Ling Zhuo's. She has already reached the 2nd step Void Sky Realm, Mo Lan continued. After Yushan's group of people from Heavenly Demon Island landed, Ling Zhuo's eyes revealed a look of dread, but he remained silent. However, Zhuowen clearly felt that Yushan would glance at him from time to time. Could it be that this woman has sensed the primitive devil metal on my body? Zhuowen's expression was calm as he thought to himself. "Junior sister? What's wrong? Could it be that there is something wrong with that person?" A man with dark circles under his eyes standing beside Yushan asked in a deep voice when he saw Yushan's strange state. Yushan shook her head and said, "This person is not a devil cultivator, but I feel a strange devil chi on him. However, it is very faint, so it might be my misperception." The man was taken aback, and then he laughed involuntarily. However, he did not think too much about it and said, "The people from the Dim Illusion sect have also come. I heard that the Dim Illusion sect's Dim Tongying has already come out of seclusion. It is said that his cultivation has also reached the 2nd step Void Sky Realm. I'm afraid he will be a great enemy of our Heavenly Demon Island this time." Yushan's beautiful eyes were cold as she said, "So what if Dim Tongying has come out of seclusion? So what if he has advanced to the 2nd step Void Sky Realm? This person lost to me once, so I have left an indelible heart demon in his heart. Even if he has advanced to the 3rd step Void Sky Realm, he may not be my match." The man smiled embarrassedly but did not say anything. Whether it was on Heavenly Demon Island or in the outside world, Yu Shan was extremely domineering and did not allow others to refute her. Although the man wanted to remind her, he thought of Yu Shan's character and did not say anything. He knew that persuading her would be taken as a sign of weakness by Yu Shan. Soon after the man finished speaking, the people from the Dim Illusion sect arrived as well. At the front of the Dim Illusion sect's group, Dim Tongying wore black robes that fluttered in the wind. There were wisps of black qi between his brows, making him seem rather strange. Zhuowen raised his head to look at the Dim Illusion sect's group. His gaze did not land on Dim Tongying, but on a middle-aged man surrounded by lightning. Lei Qi, Yun Chuyu trembled all over as she clenched her fists tightly, forcefully suppressing the impulse in her heart. Zhuowen gently patted Yun Chuyu's shoulder, secretly rejoicing that he had not taken part in the preliminary selection earlier. It was obvious that it did not detect the presence of Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu. Lei Qi retracted his divine sense. He frowned and thought to himself, could it be that Zhuowen really didn't come to the interstellar tournament? I didn't even find any trace of Yun Chuyu of the Creep Myrtle sect. Ever since he knew that the 5 subordinates he had sent out had been killed, Lei Qi paid more attention to Zhuowen. Zhuowen was only a peak heavenly god back then, but he was actually able to kill 5 of his subordinates. Moreover, one of them was a fake extreme thunder true god who had survived 18 lightning disasters. The main reason why Lei Qi wanted to kill Zhuowen was because of the extreme Dao fire sword on Zhuowen's body. However, ever since his 5 subordinates were killed, he knew that Zhuowen was not simple. Naturally, his desire to kill Zhuowen became even stronger. Looks like that Zhuowen didn't come here. Next, we'll have to rely on the Dark Fantasy sect to search for traces of that Zhuowen. Lei Qi's expression was calm as he landed among the Dark Fantasy sect's team. Yu Tongying glanced at Lei Qi. Lei Qi's talent was very strong. When he was young, he was a genius in the Dark Fantasy sect. His reputation was much greater than his, and he respected such a senior greatly. Furthermore, Yu Tongying also knew that Lei Qi had mobilized so many people for a lone cultivator called Zhuowen. Yu Tongying was very curious. What was it about this rogue cultivator called Zhuowen that caught Lei Qi's attention? Yu Tongying was even looking forward to meeting Zhuowen. However, Lei Qi had wanted Zhuowen for many years, but there was no news of him at all. It was as though Zhuowen had vanished from the face of the earth. Lei Qi's actions were just a small interlude. Not long after everyone had gathered in Dongyu Square, 4 flowing lights swept over from the starry sky outside the square. The aura of each of these 4 streams of light was exceptionally terrifying. Lei Qi's strength was already terrifying enough, but compared to the 4 flowing lights, he paled in comparison. 4 streams of light landed above the square, revealing 4 stalwart figures. If one looked closely, one could see that among the 4 people, 3 of them were exceptionally polite to one of them. Sect Master Ling Yunji of High Firmament Sect, Sect Master Yu Yewei of Tranquil Mirage Sect, and Island Master Moji of Sky Demon Island. Everyone in the square was in an uproar as they stared at 3 of the 4 people. These 3 people were the ones who were extremely polite to the 4th person. Sect Master, Island Master. After the 4 people arrived, the disciples of the 3 major sects exclaimed with reverence in their eyes. Everyone, this is the envoy sent by Lord Brahma of Middle Universe. This time, he is here to guide you in the first round of the interstellar tournament. Ling Yunji, who was dressed in white, pointed at the old man with a rosy nose behind him and said loudly. The aura of the old man with a rosy nose was similar to that of Ling Yunji, Moji, and Yu Yewei. His cultivation could be said to be unfathomable. Hearing Ling Yunji's introduction, everyone in the square was shocked. Their faces turned solemn, and the originally noisy square quieted down. The old man with a rosy nose smiled amiably. Everyone came from all over the world to participate in the interstellar tournament and make a name for yourself. Just as Sect Master Ling said, I am here to guide you in the interstellar tournament. This interstellar tournament is different from the past. Due to the large number of people, the arena elimination system has been cancelled. Having said that, the old man with a rosy nose waved his right hand, and a huge stone tablet fell from the starry sky and smashed in front of the square. This stone tablet was extremely irregular, and there was a black crack in front of it. This stone tablet is an entrance, the entrance to the trial ground. This interstellar tournament is divided into 3 rounds, and the first round is to enter the trial ground. However, before entering the trial ground, the cultivators who participate in this interstellar tournament must obtain the recognition of this stone tablet. The higher the recognition of this stone tablet, the more of this thing you will receive. The old man with a rosy nose took out a black crystal the size of a fingernail. This black crystal emitted a huge amount of energy. This energy was very strange. Once a cultivator felt this energy, they would have an impulse to absorb it. The moment the old man with a rosy nose took out the black crystal, the eyes of the 3 sect masters standing beside him lit up and revealed a blazing look. Everyone, this is a calamity crystal. This kind of thing has unimaginable benefits for true gods because absorbing the energy of the calamity crystal can speed up the descent of calamities. Moreover, it also has an extremely strong resistance to calamities. If an ordinary true god has enough calamity crystals, it is completely possible for them to break through from the true god stage 1 calamity stage to the true god stage 3 calamity stage in a short time. Moreover, the energy of the calamity crystal can be absorbed by void sky experts and make their void sky bridges more tenacious and powerful. I believe many people present know the use of this thing. As soon as the old man with a rosy nose finished speaking, the square was in an uproar. Even Zhuoan looked at the calamity crystal in astonishment. This was the first time he had heard of this so-called calamity crystal. However, when he thought about how this calamity crystal could actually speed up the advancement of a true god, Zhuoan was shocked. Just as the old man had said, if he had a lot of calamity crystals, he would be able to quickly advance to the true god stage. Moreover, this crystal could also increase his resistance to calamities. It was simply the best cultivation resource for true gods. However, Zhuoan also knew that this thing must be very precious. Otherwise, he would not have only heard about it now. Let's start now. There is a barrier in this stone tablet. Only by breaking this barrier will the entrance to the trial ground appear on this stone tablet. At that time, you will obtain the corresponding calamity crystal. Now, I can tell you clearly that the trial ground is very dangerous and you may die at any time. However, there are many calamity crystals inside. Let's see if you can find them. You can even compete for the calamity crystals in the hands of other cultivators to break through on your own. If anyone feels unconfident, you can withdraw now. By the way, I also want to remind you that there are 4 entrances to the trial ground. In addition to East Universe, West Universe, South Universe, and North Universe all have corresponding entrances. When the time comes, the competition in the trial ground will be against the cultivators of the entire star field. Everyone should be careful after entering. Although the old man with a rosy nose looked amiable, his words were cold and filled with killing intent. Okay, let's start now. Let's start with High Heaven Sect, Heavenly Demon Island, and Dark Fantasy Sect. After saying that, the old man with a rosy nose stood on top of the stone tablet while Ling Yunji, Yu Yewei, and Moji followed behind the old man. I'll go first. Ling Zhuo walked out of the group and sped up. In an instant, he arrived in front of the stone tablet and punched it with his right fist. The shadow of the illusory sky bridge even appeared behind him. Obviously, Ling Zhuo did not hold back. Asterisk boom. Asterisk the barrier on the surface of the stone tablet was instantly torn apart. The crack in front of the stone tablet spat out 7 calamity crystals and formed a necklace around Ling Zhuo's neck. Good, go in. The old man with a rosy nose nodded with admiration in his eyes. Ling Zhuo cupped his fists and stepped into the crack. After Ling Zhuo entered, the barrier on the surface of the stone tablet appeared again. With Ling Zhuo as an example, the dozen or so Ling Yun disciples who participated in the interstellar tournament also attacked. They were all disciples of High Heaven Sect and had obtained the qualifications to enter the trial ground. However, none of them obtained more calamity crystals than Ling Zhuo. The most they obtained was 5 calamity crystals. 8 calamity crystals? Suddenly, someone exclaimed. After the High Heaven sect disciples finished, Yu Tongying of the Dark Fantasy sect took the lead and blasted open the barrier, obtaining 8 calamity crystals, shocking everyone present. Chapter 1990. Lei Chi noticed. The old man with rosacea smiled, the admiration in his eyes growing stronger. Clearly, he was very satisfied with Yu Tongying's result, and Yu Yewei's smile grew even brighter. After Yu Tongying entered the stone stele, the disciples of the Dark Mirage sect also received a corresponding number of disaster crystals and entered the so-called trial ground. Junior sister, you should be able to obtain 9 disaster crystals, right? The man beside Yu Shan smiled and said confidently. Yu Shan's talent was extremely high, and she was younger than Ling Zhuo and Yu Tongying, but her cultivation had surpassed them, and she even suppressed Ling Zhuo and Yu Tongying in the Eastern Universe Plaza. The man naturally believed that Yu Shan would obtain the most disaster crystals. Yu Shan was not modest, and she said indifferently, 9? Senior brother is underestimating me too much. 10 is the least. Saying so, Yu Shan tapped her foot, and her eyes suddenly turned pitch black, and monstrous demonic chi surrounded her body. Boom! Violent demonic chi was released, and it formed a terrifying demonic shadow behind Yu Shan. When this demonic shadow appeared, the entire Eastern Universe Plaza was shocked. The old man with rosacea's eyes flashed as he stared at Yu Shan, who was releasing terrifying demonic chi, and he couldn't help but praise, such a young age, demonic chi, your heavenly demon island is blessed. Demonic chi said rather politely, Envoy Bai is too polite, Yu Shan is just lucky. Ling Yunji and Yu Yewei's expressions were unnatural. The two of them were not mediocre, and they could tell at a glance that Yu Shan's aura had reached the peak of the 2nd step void sky, and was not far from the 3rd step void sky. This woman has a chance to compete for the Tower of Hanno, the old man with rosacea said meaningfully. Bang! Demonic chi surrounded Yu Shan's palm, and it slammed into the restriction, instantly shattering it. At the same time, 12 disaster crystals flew out from the stone stele. Yu Shan put away the 12 disaster crystals and immediately rushed into the stone stele. Heavens, it's actually 12 disaster crystals. This Yu Shan is so terrifying. This scene was naturally seen by many people in the plaza, and it immediately caused an uproar. Hearing the uproar around him, the corners of Demonic's mouth involuntarily curled up. On the other hand, Ling Yunji and Yu Yewei's expressions turned ugly. After the disciples of the 3 major sects were tested, the other forces in the starfield and the cultivators from the outside world who had come to the starfield were tested. Although the speed of the test was very fast, there were many people in the square. If they wanted to finish all the tests, it would probably take a day. Fortunately, there was an expert like the rosacea old man presiding over it. Otherwise, the entire plaza would be in chaos. Due to the example of the disciples of the 3 major sects, many cultivators in the square thought that it would not be difficult to obtain the disaster crystal stone from the stone tablet, so most of the cultivators were not very worried. However, as one cultivator after another failed to break through the restrictions and obtain the corresponding disaster crystals, the bustling plaza fell silent. Generally, 90% of the cultivators who went up to take the test would not be able to obtain the qualifications to enter the stone tablet. This immediately dispelled the enthusiasm and luck of most of the cultivators. I'm afraid that the entrance to the trial grounds is part of the galactic tournament, right? Zhuoan narrowed his eyes and looked at most of the eliminated cultivators with a thoughtful expression. Mo Yang, who was standing beside Mo Lan, had an unsightly expression. Many of the cultivators who went up before were stronger than her, but none of them were able to obtain the disaster crystal stone. This caused Mo Yang's heart to sink. Villa Lord, I'll go up and try. Mo Yang gritted her teeth, and under Mo Lan's nod, she jumped in front of the stone tablet. Divine power condensed in her right hand, and she blasted out a palm strike at the stone tablet's restriction. Bang! Mo Yang's face paled and she was sent flying. Mo Lan, who had a gloomy expression, caught her. At this moment, Mo Lan sighed in her heart. Mo Yang was the strongest genius of Mo Yu Villa, but now she was not even qualified to enter the trial grounds, let alone Mo Jun and Mo Hong. Thinking of this, Mo Lan looked at Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu beside her and felt a little relieved. Zhuowen was very strong, and he was not more than 3,000 years old. He should be able to obtain the qualifications to enter the trial grounds. Zhuowen did not go up to take the test. His attention had been on Lei Qi the entire time. Although Lei Qi did not pay special attention to Dongyu Square after scanning with her divine sense, however, Zhuowen knew that if Yun Chuyu went up alone with him, they might be targeted by Lei Qi. If they were recognized at that time, it would be really bad. Yun Chuyu also had this concern. As more and more people went up to take the test, her body went weak, and she looked at Lei Qi with some fear. Chuyu, take this. When you go up later, you have to be fast. If you pass the test, immediately crush this escape talisman to enter the stone tablet. If you fail, crush the escape talisman to escape Dongyu Square. Zhuowen stuffed a jade talisman into Yun Chuyu's hand and secretly transmitted his voice. Yun Chuyu's talent was not bad, and during this period of time, Zhuowen had given Yun Chuyu fire spirit juice to cultivate, so Yun Chuyu's strength was much stronger than ordinary one-disaster true gods. Moreover, after Zhuowen's observation during this period of time, he found that the stone tablet did not distribute disaster crystals based purely on strength, but also on one's talent. Zhuowen speculated that Yun Chuyu should be able to pass the test this time. Yun Chuyu looked at Zhuowen worriedly and transmitted her voice, "Big brother Zhuo, if I'm discovered, Lei Qi will notice you. I might be able to escape, but you, don't worry, I have my ways," Zhuowen said with a smile. Yun Chuyu hesitated again and again, but in the end, she agreed. Half a day passed, and more than half of the cultivators in the square had been tested. The red-nosed old man, Ling Yunji, Mo Ji, and Yu Yewei were also uninterested. Very few of the cultivators behind them had obtained more than 5 disaster crystals, and even 3 was extremely rare. Even Lei Qi glanced at the stone tablet without much interest. She did not pay much attention to the tests of these ordinary cultivators. When a cultivator dejectedly retreated from the stone tablet, Yun Chuyu flew onto the stone tablet under Zhuowen's instructions. Yun Chuyu's appearance did not attract too much attention. After all, Yun Chuyu's aura was not strong, and she was only a true god of one calamity. Yun Chuyu's movements were extremely fast. The moment she arrived in front of the stone tablet, she struck out with her palm, and all the divine power in her body poured out in front of the stone tablet. Rumble. The restriction stiffened, then broke, and 3 disaster crystals fell from the stone tablet. Not bad. A true god of one calamity was able to obtain 3 disaster crystals. That's not bad. The red-nosed old man glanced at Yun Chuyu, revealing a trace of amazement. Although Yun Chuyu's face was covered by a veil, the veil was nothing to an expert like the red-nosed old man. Naturally, Yun Chuyu's beautiful face was in full view. Lei Qi also noticed Yun Chuyu. He originally appeared to be indifferent, but his gaze quickly became serious. In the end, he even stood up. He had already recognized Yun Chuyu. Yun Chuyu put away the 3 disaster crystals, then with a step, she entered the stone tablet's entrance. Yun Chuyu of the Creep Myrtle sect. Lei Qi's expression was ugly. He originally wanted to stop Yun Chuyu, but unfortunately, Yun Chuyu's movements were too fast, and she had already disappeared into the entrance. Lei Qi's mind was filled with a myriad of thoughts, and he immediately realized that something was wrong. With his powerful divine sense, he had clearly already investigated the Dongyu Square before, but he did not find Yun Chuyu. How did Yun Chuyu appear here? That's not right. Did I miss something? Lei Qi suddenly thought of something, and his cold gaze immediately fell on the place where Mo Lan and the others were. Whoosh! Zhuowen's heart sank. Without even thinking, he unfurled his torch dragon wings and rushed toward the stone tablet in front of him. He knew very well that since Lei Qi's gaze had fallen here, he had most likely discovered something. Therefore, he had to immediately enter the stone tablet's entrance before Lei Qi could react. In front of Zhuowen, there was already a cultivator who intended to attack the stone tablet to test it. However, before the cultivator could even attack, he felt his body lighten. He was actually pushed away by a powerful force. Then, a young man with a pair of dragon wings on his back appeared in front of the stone tablet. Rumble. Without hesitation, Zhuoan smashed down with his fist, and the restriction broke with a bang. At the same time, Zhuoan discovered that a strange power had entered his body from the stone tablet, and it quickly scanned his entire body. After this power entered his body, Zhuoan felt as if all the secrets in his body had been seen through. Beep, beep, beep. Suddenly, 15 calamity crystals fell from the stele. Whoosh. At this moment, the entire square fell into silence. However, after the silence, there was an uproar that could topple mountains and overturn the seas. No one expected that someone would obtain more disaster crystals than Yu Shan of the Heavenly Demon Island. Moreover, the person who had obtained this result was a cultivator that no one recognized. What was even stranger was that this cultivator was only a one disaster true god. Rumble. When Zhuoan took the 15 disaster crystals and stepped into the entrance of the stone tablet, a terrifying aura firmly locked onto him. At the same time, a huge thunder city appeared in the sky above Zhuoan. This thunder city was composed of countless lightning arcs. Each lightning arc was as thick as an arm. They were densely packed together, forming a terrifying thunder city. Lei Qi stood on top of the thunder city. Her huge divine sense was like a mountain, firmly suppressing Zhuoan. Zhuoan, you're quite the schemer. You were actually able to evade the probing of my divine sense earlier. I've truly underestimated you. Lei Qi's voice was deafening. Zhuoan did not hesitate to bring out the glorious purple galaxy sword and the 48 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword. Even the thunderfire sword was forced to fly out, bringing along the supreme fire sword and the blood immortal sword. This time, Zhuoan did not hold back at all. He used all his trump cards. The 48 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword transformed into a massive vortex of killing intent. The glorious purple galaxy divine sword slashed out the 4 major sword moves of the Tao of Destruction sword art. The thunderfire sword also unleashed a desperate move. The extreme fire sword is really with you. You dare to take this thing. You are simply courting death. Chapter 1991. Repair the Thunder City released by Lei Qi was too terrifying. The 4 sword moves of the glorious purple galaxy divine sword had been destroyed in an instant. However, the killing intent vortex formed by the 48 embryos of the primitive devil gold sword had caused the Thunder City to stagnate for a moment. Hey! It's the no-beginning devil gold. Lei Qi also noticed the 48 embryos of the no-beginning devil gold swords that caused the Thunder City to slow down slightly. However, he soon sneered and the Thunder City instantly broke the killing intent whirlpool. The 48 embryos of the no-beginning devil gold swords were shattered. Even the blood immortal sword and the supreme flaming sword that were controlled by the Lei Hua sword were blown away. Lei Qi was not in a hurry to catch the supreme flaming sword. Instead, he looked at Zhuoan indifferently. He was very clear about how terrifying this Thunder City was. This Zhuoan was definitely going to die here. Since he had killed this kid, everything on him would naturally belong to him. Hence, he was not in a hurry. The speed of Lei Qi's attack was too fast. It happened in the blink of an eye. When the people on the square noticed it, the Thunder City released by Lei Qi was already very close. It would only take a breath's time for it to completely smash Zhuoan's head. Although most of them did not know Zhuoan, they knew that Zhuoan was going to die. Lei Qi's cultivation was above the Void Sky 5th stage. However, the young man in front of him was only a one disaster true god. There was no way he could survive. Zhuoan spat out a mouthful of blood. Countless lightning arcs were like a rising tide as they engulfed his entire body. At this moment, Zhuoan only felt that his internal organs were tumbling. Countless lightning arcs wrapped around him, causing his entire body to feel numb. Xiaohei, come back! Zhuoan roared as he kept the Lei Hua sword and the no-beginning devil gold sword embryos. Lei Qi's eyes were filled with disdain. In his opinion, Zhuoan had decided to give up and wait for his death by keeping the Lei Hua sword and the no-beginning devil gold sword embryos. Die! Lei Qi sneered as the Thunder City slammed into Zhuoan's body. In an instant, terrifying lightning radiance spread throughout the entire square, causing many cultivators to squint their eyes. The old man with rosacea furrowed his brows. Lei Chi had acted on his own accord to deal with a junior, which made him a little displeased. However, Lei Chi's speed was too fast. Before he could even react, that junior had already been smashed by the Thunder City. The old man with rosacea, who had originally intended to lend a helping hand, withdrew his hand. He knew that no matter how heaven-defying true God Yi Zai was, he would definitely die under such a terrifying attack. Ci. A series of strange noises suddenly rang out. Under the Thunder City, black lightning suddenly spread out. There wasn't much of this black lightning, but the aura on it was extremely sharp, as if it could destroy everything. It was this trace of black lightning that was faintly supporting the Thunder City. Lei Chi also discovered that something was wrong. Just when he was preparing to strengthen the attack of the Thunder City, the white-robed Zhuoan who was supposed to be destroyed by the Thunder City was wrapped in a black shadow and stepped into the entrance of the stone tablet. Bang! The black lightning only lasted for a moment before it completely dissipated. Lei Chi gloomily stared at the figure that disappeared into the stone tablet's entrance, flustered and exasperated. He knew that Zhuoan wasn't killed by him, but at the same time, he was indescribably shocked. He was a dignified fifth-step void sky expert, but he was actually unable to kill Zhuoan, who was merely a true God Yi Zai. From this, it could be seen how extraordinary Zhuoan was. That bitch Yin Bingyun's eyesight isn't bad. The person she chose isn't simple. Lei Chi put away the Thunder City, and after cursing in his heart, he rushed to the side and bowed to the old man with rosacea in front of him. Sir Envoy, just now, that youth stole this humble one's precious item, so this humble one couldn't help but act after recognizing him. Yu Yewei also hurriedly said, Sir Envoy, please don't be angry. Lei Chi's personality is rather impulsive, so, the old man with rosacea waved his hand and coldly looked at Lei Chi, saying, what's the name of that youth? What's his origin? Lei Chi's heart skipped a beat. He knew that Zhuoan had probably attracted the attention of the old man with rosacea. He cursed in his heart, but could only answer honestly, his name is Zhuoan, and he's a rogue cultivator. I don't know his exact origin. The old man with rosacea nodded, and then waved his right hand. Lei Chi, who was bowing, stiffened, and his right hand was unknowingly chopped off. Lei Chi covered the wound on his right hand, and his heart was somewhat terrified. He immediately knelt down on one knee. This is a warning to you. Next time, I don't want anyone to casually kill someone in front of me like this, the old man with rosacea said indifferently. Lei Chi lowered his head, not daring to look at the old man with rosacea, but his heart was abnormally angry. This time, it could be said that he suffered a double loss. Not only did he fail to successfully kill Zhuoan, but he also offended the old man with rosacea. At this moment, the square was in an uproar. Everyone was discussing Zhuoan. Not only did he obtain 15 disaster crystals, but he also escaped from the sure-kill attack of Lei Chi, a fifth-stage void sky expert. Such an action was absolutely world-shaking. Mo Lan and Mo Yang were stunned in place, and neither of them spoke for a long time. Villa Lord, that Zhuoan, is actually so strong. Mo Yang said somewhat shamefully. Previously, Mo Yang was still a little unhappy that Zhuoan had taken away Mo Hong and Mo Jun's spots, but now she no longer had such thoughts. Mo Lan's gaze was complicated. He finally understood why Zhuoan was so confident that he could help their Mo Yu villa enter the top 100. It turned out that this child's strength was so terrifying. I hope Lord Lei Chi doesn't investigate our Mo Yu villa. Mo Lan didn't have any joy. He knew that since Zhuoan had a grudge with Lei Chi, and if Lei Chi found out that Zhuoan's spot was given by their Mo Yu villa, then their Mo Yu villa would be finished. When everyone in the square finished testing, the old man with rosacea put away the stone tablet and said indifferently to Ling Yunji, Mo Ji, and Yu Yewei, the three of you, this old man's main purpose this time is to guide the participants to the trial grounds. The exit of the trial grounds is not in Dongyu, but near Zhongyu's Tower of Hanoi. If the three of you want to see the results, you can come to Zhongyu. This old man will take his leave first. After saying that, the old man with rosacea swaggered off. This was a sunken canyon, and the surroundings were filled with grey fog. Poochie. The white-clothed Zhuoan drilled out of a crack and fell to the ground, coughing up blood. This sovereign's injuries are very serious. The black-clothed Zhuoan squatted down and checked on the white-clothed Zhuoan. His expression was extremely solemn. Lei Qi was too strong. Just the Thunder City alone was enough to blast the sovereign's body into smithereens. If he didn't release the black-clothed Zhuoan in time and release the heavenly thunder eye, the sovereign would have died. But even so, countless cracks appeared on the body of the main body. Between the cracks, streams of blood flowed out. The main body's white clothes were dyed the color of blood. Not only that, the black-clothed Zhuoan also suffered heavy injuries. Blood flowed out from his forehead. In order to stop Lei Qi's Thunder City, the black-clothed Zhuoan released all of his heavenly thunder eye. The heavenly thunder that he had previously stored was released without any regard for his life. As a result, Zhuoan overused his heavenly thunder eye and suffered a certain injury. Lei Qi, if I don't take revenge, I, Zhuoan, am not a human. Thinking of the previous scene, Zhuoan's eyes were bloodshot and filled with killing intent. Zhuoan knew very well that if he didn't have the heavenly thunder at that time, his sovereign would have died without a doubt. Even Devour's doppelganger might have been seriously injured. He would remember this grudge. However, Zhuoan knew that his current strength was too weak. The gap between him and Lei Qi was too big. He had to become stronger. He knew very well that Lei Qi would never let this matter rest. Moreover, he had promised Yun Chuyu that if he had the strength within 100 years, he would definitely rescue Yin Bingyun. All of this required him to have great strength. The interstellar tournament this time was the way for Zhuoan to increase his strength. Not to mention the Tower of Haina that could allow a cultivator to be reborn, just the calamity crystal that the rosy-nosed old man had mentioned could allow Zhuoan to rapidly advance. The black-robed Zhuoan took out the level 7 divine medicine, wild sea cucumber flower, from his spirit ring. He kneaded it into a liquid and fed it to the unconscious white-robed Zhuoan, temporarily stabilizing his injuries. Zhuowen had obtained the Zong sea cucumber flower from the ruined herb garden of the Almighty Void Heaven Almighty, even though all the level 7 divine herbs had withered. However, ever since Zhuowen obtained the Scarlet Cloud Immortal Soil, he began to plant the withered level 6 and level 7 divine medicines into the Scarlet Cloud Immortal Soil. Relying on the Scarlet Cloud Immortal Soil, more than half of the withered divine medicines on Zhuowen's body had recovered. This wild sea cucumber flower was one of them. Moreover, this wild sea cucumber flower had miraculous healing effects. In addition, it was a level 7 divine medicine, so its medicinal effects were extremely strong. Just this wild sea cucumber flower alone was definitely priceless in the outside world. After all, once a divine medicine reached level 5 or above, it would be very difficult to buy it with god stones in the outside world. One would have to use similarly precious treasures to exchange for it. After stabilizing the white-robed Zhuowen, the black-robed Zhuowen put the white-robed Zhuowen into his inner world. At the same time, he put on the white-robed Zhuowen's spirit ring and began to extend his powerful divine sense. What made Zhuowen frown was that his divine sense could only extend to a range of 100 meters in this place. Moreover, he did not see anyone else in this canyon. He did not even see Yun Chuyu, who had just entered not long ago. It seems that the location of this trial ground is random. Let's find a secluded place to recuperate first. Once my injuries have healed, I'll go out and find Chuyu. The black-robed Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. Then, he rushed to the left. In his divine sense, he discovered that there was a natural cave there. When he arrived at the cave, Zhuowen used his divine sense to scan the inside. After he discovered that there was no danger inside, he entered. At the same time, Zhuowen set up a shielding formation outside the cave. He also set up level 3 trap formation and killing formation inside the cave. With these two formations, it would be very difficult for an ordinary real god of 3 disasters to break through the cave. After setting up the formations, Zhuowen took out the illusory heavenly bridge and placed his original body on the illusory heavenly bridge. He let the enormous energy of the illusory heavenly bridge heal his original body's injuries continuously. Chapter 1992. In a Canyon. 10 days later, the black-clad Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. The black-clad Zhuowen's real body was Devour, so his recovery ability was amazing. Moreover, after the attack with Lei Qi, the black-clad Zhuowen's injuries were much lighter than the white-clad Zhuowen's. Therefore, he had almost recovered in 10 days. On the other hand, although the white-clad Zhuowen had woken up, his injuries were still more serious. If the white-robed Zhuowen wanted to recover, it would probably take some time. Zhuowen didn't know anything about this trial ground, so he didn't plan to go out rashly. Zhuowen flipped his right hand, and 15 black crystals appeared in his palm. These were the calamity crystals he had obtained from the stone Steely. Zhuowen was a little surprised to obtain 15 calamity crystals. Before the test, he had estimated that he could obtain more than 5 calamity crystals, but the result of the test was beyond his expectations. Zhuowen speculated that the reason he had obtained so many calamity crystals was because of Devour. Suddenly, the calamity crystals in his hand floated up on their own, and a dim light entered Zhuowen's forehead. Zhuowen found that this dim light contained a message. The rules of the trial ground are very simple, which is to snatch as many calamity crystals as possible. You can use calamity crystals, but you can't have 0 calamity crystals. Otherwise, you will be sent out of the trial ground. The time limit for staying here is 50 years. After 50 years, you will be sent out of the exit. Also, the trial ground is a secret world with 18 layers. The higher you go, the more calamity crystals there are. If you want more power, you have to keep climbing. However, you must remember that in this place, the higher your cultivation base, the stronger you will be. Those with high cultivation bases shouldn't be arrogant. Zhuowen knitted his brows, carefully studying the message in the calamity crystals. It was thought-provoking, especially the last sentence. Zhuowen suddenly remembered that 10 days ago, when he had first entered this place, his soul consciousness could only extend to a range of 100 meters. Generally speaking, a true god's divine sense was very powerful. Just by extending it, it could cover the surface of an ordinary planet. On the other hand, Zhuowen's divine soul had been tempered by the universe-quenching stone, and he had cultivated the stars meditation diagram. His divine soul was even more terrifying than a true god's. However, it could only extend 100 meters in this place, which showed how unusual this person was. Divine sense was extremely important to a cultivator. It served as a cultivator's eyes, allowing them to remain vigilant at all times and foresee danger ahead of time. If one's spiritual sense did not work, then the combat power of a cultivator would be greatly reduced. The stronger one's divine sense is, the more advantage one has. That should be the meaning of the last sentence. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He put away the illusory heavenly bridge and stood up. Although the white-robed Zhuowen was injured, the black-robed Zhuowen had completely recovered. He planned to go out and look for Yun Chuyu and see if he could find any clues about this place. However, before leaving the cave, Zhuowen planned to test the effects of the calamity crystal and see if it was as magical as the old man said. Let's use 5 calamity crystals first to see the effect. After saying that, Zhuowen crushed 5 calamity crystals. A surge of energy poured into Zhuowen's body, causing Zhuowen to let out a comfortable sigh. The energy of the calamity crystals was completely different from the energy of the divine stones. This energy was more compatible with a true god, and its quality was many times higher than the energy of the divine stones. With just 5 calamity crystals, Zhuowen felt that the energy in his body had become much more abundant. After absorbing the 5 calamity crystals, Zhuowen suddenly felt his entire body heat up. This was not the first time Zhuowen had experienced this feeling. The last time he had rushed to the heaven-receiving stone, before the lightning calamity had suddenly descended from the starry sky, he had felt this way. A second lightning calamity? Zhuowen's expression changed. He had only used 5 calamity crystals and had actually caused a second lightning calamity to descend. Wasn't this too fast? In fact, what Zhuowen didn't know was that when an ordinary cultivator used calamity crystals to hasten the descent of a lightning calamity, it would take at least 10 years. Moreover, the amount of calamity crystals required was not small. However, Zhuowen was different. He had Devour's doppelganger, and this doppelganger was too abnormal. It was rejected by the starry skies laws, so the interval between lightning calamities was much shorter than that of ordinary cultivators. Otherwise, when the black-robed Zhuowen had just advanced to the true god realm, it would have been impossible for him to experience a lightning calamity. However, it had appeared in the starry sky. This was the starry sky's reaction to Devao's rejection. Regarding the lightning calamity, Zhuowen didn't show any fear. On the contrary, he was extremely excited. His heavenly thunder eye happened to be the nemesis of the lightning calamity. Moreover, it could absorb the energy of the lightning calamity and transform it into terrifying heavenly lightning. The energy of the first lightning calamity had only transformed into a trace of heavenly lightning. However, by relying on this trace of heavenly lightning, Zhuowen was able to resist Lei Qi's Thunder City and luckily escape the calamity. The heavenly lightning was also consumed in the end. The heavenly lightning was currently Zhuowen's strongest trump card. Naturally, he urgently needed more heavenly lightning. Relying on Devao's body to produce heavenly lightning would take too long. He had to quickly accumulate heavenly lightning. Now that the second lightning calamity had descended, Zhuowen was naturally wild with joy. Rumble. Above the dusky canyon, a gate surrounded by black lightning appeared. A destructive aura spread out from the canyon. The cultivators wandering around the canyon raised their heads and looked at the lightning gate floating in the air in astonishment. Lightning calamity? Someone is actually undergoing the lightning calamity now? How long has it been since he entered the trial ground? It's possible that this person's lightning calamity is approaching and he just happened to enter the trial ground. Therefore, he decided to undergo the lightning calamity here. This person is really stupid. Isn't undergoing the lightning calamity in the trial ground the same as telling others where he is? Like green smoke, silhouettes flew in the direction of the lightning gate. Obviously, many cultivators had their eyes on the cultivator undergoing the lightning calamity. In the trial ground, there were no rules or restrictions. The only rule here was to snatch calamity crystals to improve one's cultivation and not be eliminated. The cultivators who entered the trial ground were all cautious. Especially when they found that divine senses were useless here, they were even more careful and did not dare to expose their positions. Zhuowen did not know that he was being watched by the people near the canyon. At this moment, he walked out of the cave and stared at the lightning gate in the sky with a smile on his face. Whoosh! Suddenly, several lightning arcs swept out from the lightning gate. Each lightning arc was as thick as a finger. Zhuowen had compared the power of the second lightning calamity. The power of the second lightning calamity was indeed much stronger than the first. However, Zhuowen was more looking forward to seeing how much heavenly lightning he could produce this time. Of course, Zhuowen did not neglect this time. He took out 48 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold and surrounded himself as a precaution. As the lightning arc descended, the heavenly thunder eye opened. The suction force gushed out again and sucked in all the terrifying lightning arcs. The lightning arcs fell wave after wave, and their power was getting stronger and stronger. However, the heavenly thunder eye was not afraid and swallowed the lightning arcs again and again. Of course, a part of the lightning arcs would occasionally escape, but they were all blocked by the no-beginning demonic gold sword embryos. When the last wave of lightning calamity descended, 9 lightning arcs escaped. Each lightning arc was as thick as a thumb and was much more powerful than the previous ones. Zhuowen did not dare to be negligent. The no-beginning demonic gold sword embryos blasted out together and blocked 8 of them. Obviously, the heavenly thunder eye absorbed one of them. After the heavenly thunder eye absorbed all the lightning arcs, it released another one. One after another, it smoothly absorbed all the 9 lightning arcs. At this moment, Zhuowen looked inside the heavenly thunder eye and found that there were 2 heavenly lightning arcs in the heavenly thunder eye. Although they were only as thin and inconspicuous as threads, Zhuowen knew very well how powerful a thread of heavenly lightning was. After passing through the lightning calamity, Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. His divine sense extended to 100 meters away and found that more than 10 cultivators were approaching. Zhuowen even found that one of the cultivators behind Zhuowen had a ferocious look in his eyes. He actually took out a divine weapon and rushed toward Zhuowen. This cultivator did not control the divine weapon with his divine sense. Instead, he held the divine weapon in his right hand and stabbed it at Zhuowen's back at lightning speed. Obviously, he wanted to kill Zhuowen with one blow. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. With a wave of his right hand, the no-beginning demonic gold sword embryo flew out of his hand and instantly blasted the cultivator's chest. Poochie. This cultivator obviously did not expect Zhuowen to be able to use his divine sense to control the divine weapon. After being hit by the no-beginning demonic gold sword embryo, his chest caved in and he fell to the ground, dying. You can still use your divine sense. Didn't you say that divine sense below the void sky realm can't be used? This cultivator died with remaining grievances. His slightly bulging eyes stared at Zhuowen. Obviously, he found it hard to believe that Zhuowen could use his divine sense. Zhuowen's eyes moved. From this cultivator's words, he gained a lot of information. It seemed that divine sense below the void sky realm was too weak. This place was completely forbidden. However, the divine sense of a void sky realm master was extremely powerful and should be able to be used in this trial ground. However, Zhuowen believed that even if a void sky realm master's divine sense was powerful, it should be greatly limited in this place. As for Zhuowen, his divine sense had been tempered by the starry sky quenching stone. Its sharpness and penetrating power were far stronger than ordinary divine senses. Even if his strength was not as strong as a void sky realm master, he could still extend it to about 100 meters in this place. Not long after the cultivator finished speaking, he stopped breathing and died. Zhuowen casually took the cultivator's spirit ring and checked it. There were not many precious things in it, but he found 3 disaster crystals. Many cultivators who were close to Zhuowen saw this too. Their bodies stiffened, and they quickly backed away. They couldn't use their divine sense in this place. Facing a cultivator who could use divine sense, wouldn't they be asking for trouble? This person must be a void sky realm master. We can't provoke him. Run. Many cultivators hurriedly fled. They all thought that Zhuowen was a void sky realm master who had concealed his cultivation. How could they dare to provoke such a terrifying person? You think you can come and go as you please? How can it be so cheap? Zhuowen sneered, and the surrounding embryos of the original demonic gold sword shot out, intercepting the dozen or so cultivators. Chapter 1993. Heaven and Earth Sect. What do you want? A black-clothed man turned around, fear on his face, but he still calmly stared at the approaching Zhuowen. Shouldn't I be the one asking you this question? Why did you all secretly come to my place? Zhuowen said indifferently. We're just passing by. The black-clothed man said. Whoosh. Under Zhuowen's control, the no-beginning devil gold sword embryo arrived in front of the black-clothed man's forehead in an instant. A powerful divine sense firmly locked onto the black-clothed man, making him not dare to move recklessly. This black-clothed man's cultivation was slightly higher than Zhuowen's. He was a 2 calamities true god, but unfortunately, his divine sense was suppressed in this place. In a battle between 2 people, one side could use divine sense to control a divine tool to attack, while the other side could only attack with his bare hands. Even if this person's cultivation was higher than Zhuowen's, he was naturally at a disadvantage because he couldn't use divine sense. I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Hand over all the disaster crystals you have, Zhuowen said indifferently. Once these words were said, everyone was shocked. The disaster crystals were what they relied on to continue staying in this trial ground. If they handed over all of them, they would be eliminated. At that time, they would be sent out of the trial ground ahead of time. They had already experienced the benefits of the trial ground not long after they entered. Here, relying on the disaster crystals, they could quickly increase their cultivation. It was unknown how much faster it was outside, so how could they be willing to hand it over? Everyone, don't be afraid. Even if this person's divine sense is special, he's still a 1 calamity true god. There are more than a dozen of us here, so he definitely can't deal with all of us. Let's work together to kill this person and divide the disaster crystals equally. The black-clothed man's eyes flickered as he secretly transmitted his voice to the others. Unfortunately, just as this man finished transmitting his voice, the no-beginning devil gold sword embryo in front of him directly pierced through his forehead. Bang! The black-clothed man was instantly killed, but Zhuowen's eyes were emotionless as he said, he thought his voice transmission was hidden, but he didn't expect my divine sense to detect it. Even if I don't know the content of his voice transmission, I can guess what it is. Do you all agree with this person's suggestion? The death of the black-clothed man shocked the rest of the people. They didn't dare to look at Zhuowen's eyes and immediately handed over the disaster crystals on their bodies. Although there were many benefits in the trial grounds, they still required one to be alive. If one didn't even have one's life, then all of this would just be an illusion. Zhuowen collected the disaster crystals one by one. After counting them, he found that there were 30 of them. This number was beyond Zhuowen's expectations. After putting away the disaster crystals, the cultivators were surrounded by white light and disappeared. Clearly, they had been teleported out. Having received 43 disaster crystals in one go, Zhuowen was in a good mood. Let's go ahead and take a look. I wonder if we can find Chu Yu. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice, and then he stomped his right foot and vanished on the spot. With the help of his spiritual consciousness, Zhuowen was able to avoid many dangers in this canyon. Zhuowen walked through this canyon for several days and found that the dangers of this canyon not only came from the cultivators, but also the natural traps here. For example, Zhuowen once passed through a swamp, and a black python suddenly jumped out and dragged a cultivator into the swamp. The strength of the black python was not much stronger than the cultivator, but the cultivator couldn't use his spiritual consciousness, so he couldn't perceive the danger in advance. In the end, he was dragged into the swamp by the black python and strangled to death. In the canyon, there were many dangerous places similar to the swamp. It was because Zhuowen had the help of his spiritual consciousness that he could perceive the danger in advance and avoid it every time. While Zhuowen was still making his way through the canyon, at the far end of the canyon, there was a desolate wasteland. At the very front of the wasteland, there was a huge broken gate pillar. The gate was ancient and vicissitudes of life. At a glance, one could tell that it was very old. At this moment, at the exit of the canyon, 5 figures rushed out. They were 3 men and 2 women. Of the 2 women, one of them was average-looking, but she was good at dressing up. The other woman was wearing a veil. Although he couldn't see the face of this veiled woman, he could tell from her autumn eyes that this woman's beauty was definitely not ordinary. Moreover, with the hazy feeling of the veil, this person had an additional trace of mysterious charm. Chu Yu, this is the exit of the canyon. As for the trial ground, you should know that there are a total of 18 levels. This is the lowest level and has the least amount of calamity crystals. The higher you go, the more calamity crystals there are. A tall and handsome young man in a blue shirt said to the veiled woman with a smile on his face in a rather attentive manner. The veiled woman frowned. She wasn't used to the way the young man addressed her, but she didn't object. She bowed and said, "Senior brother Ji Yu, thank you for your help this time. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to get out. It's a small matter. The gate in front is the entrance to the real trial ground. However, the seniors of the cosmic sect who entered in the past mentioned that there are cultivators guarding the gate. However, Chu Yu, don't worry. The 4 of us are from the cosmic sect. When these people hear the name of the cosmic sect, they won't stop us," the young man in blue said proudly. Yun Chuyu nodded slightly, but there was some worry in her eyes. She wasn't worried about herself, but about Zhuowen. Back then, after she tested the stone tablet, Lei Qi had already noticed that something was wrong. With Lei Qi's methods, she would immediately notice Zhuowen. Although Zhuowen was strong, the difference between him and Lei Qi was too great. If he went up against Lei Qi, he would definitely die. If anything happens to Big Brother Zhuo, I, Yun Chuyu, swear that when I become strong, I will kill Lei Qi to pay tribute to Big Brother Zhuo, Yun Chuyu thought with determination. When the average-looking woman saw the young man in blue being so attentive to Yun Chuyu, the corners of her mouth twitched. She was a little unhappy. The young man in blue was called Jiyu Feng. He was one of the more outstanding disciples of the cosmic sect. Although he couldn't be compared to the top geniuses, his talent wasn't weak either. After cultivating for less than 1,000 years, he was already a 3 disasters true god. This time, Jiyu Feng entered the trial ground. As long as his luck wasn't too bad, he had a chance to break through the void sky realm and enter the ranks of the top geniuses of the cosmic sect. This woman had always admired Jiyu Feng. Unfortunately, she didn't have any feelings for him. Jiyu Feng didn't think much of her, so he didn't think much of her. This made the woman a little angry. Now that Yun Chuyu had joined their team, the 3 male cultivators in the team, including Jiyu Feng, were much more attentive to Yun Chuyu. This made the woman very jealous, and she secretly cursed this woman for being a vixen. Let's go. Jiyu Feng's face was flushed. Although Yun Chuyu was wearing a veil, he was sure that Yun Chuyu's beauty was definitely the best he had ever seen in his life. If he could have such a beautiful female cultivator as his cultivation partner, Jiyu Feng's heart would burn like a fire. At this moment, he had to perform well. The group of 5 arrived in front of the doorpost. On the doorpost, there were 9 cultivators sitting cross-legged. The 9 cultivators were all men. The oldest looked to be in his 40s, and the youngest looked to be in his 30s. Jiyu Feng looked at the 9 cultivators with fear. He knew very well that these cultivators weren't newcomers. They were old people who had entered the trial ground in the past. This trial ground was an extremely famous trial ground in the Middle Universe. It was a trial ground that the great Brahma heaven had specially created for the many cultivators in the Middle Universe. In the core star zone, only cultivators in the Middle Universe could freely enter this place after paying a certain amount of god stones. Of course, this place was very dangerous, and one was responsible for their own life and death. Regardless of one's status in the Middle Universe, the great Brahma heaven wouldn't be responsible if one died here. Apart from the central universe, cultivators from the other 4 universes could only enter this trial ground through specific passageways. This time, the great Brahma heaven could be said to be opening this trial ground to cultivators outside the Middle Universe. In the past, the galactic tournament had never been treated like this. Where there were people, there would be Jianghu. The trial ground didn't rely on cultivation, but on spiritual sense. Cultivators above the void sky realm could use spiritual sense, but those below the void sky realm had to rely on talent. If one didn't have talent in spiritual sense, then it would be safer to continue moving forward after reaching the void sky realm and being able to use spiritual sense. Most of the cultivators guarding the entrance were Zhongyu cultivators who couldn't advance any further in the trial grounds but were unwilling to leave. They hoped to accumulate enough calamity crystals by collecting tolls from newcomers so they could break through to the void sky realm and enter deeper into the trial grounds to obtain more calamity crystals. Of course, most of the cultivators guarding the door were at the bottom of the trial ground. The true geniuses and masters disdained to do this. When Jiyu Feng's group of 5 arrived at the door, the 9 cultivators sitting cross-legged at the door opened their eyes at the same time and stared coldly at Jiyu Feng's group. These 9 cultivators didn't have high cultivation. 8 of them were 2 calamities true god while the leader was 3 calamities true god. However, he didn't have any wind calamity aura. Clearly, he hadn't passed the wind calamity yet. Senior Martial Brothers, we're disciples of the cosmic sect. I hope you'll let us in on account of our cosmic sect. Jiyu Feng felt that these 9 cultivators weren't very strong and showed a trace of disdain, but his tone was still polite. Cosmic sect. There was a powerful void sky cultivator from the cosmic sect before. I think he was called Lian Zi, the leader said indifferently. Jiyu Feng was slightly happy. Senior Martial Brother Lian Zi is the #1 genius of our cosmic sect. His cultivation is unfathomable. Oh. In that case, take out 50 calamity crystals. 10 per person. That's quite a discount, the cultivator in the lead said calmly. Jiyu Feng's face froze. He didn't expect these cultivators to not give him any face even after he introduced himself. Maybe you don't know about the cosmic sect. The cosmic sect is one of the top 10 sects in the star field. Before Jiyu Feng finished speaking, A gust of wind swept over and landed heavily in front of him. He stopped talking and covered his body with his hands. Ji Feng groaned and involuntarily retreated dozens of steps. He looked at the leader in shock. Chapter 1994. Ji Feng's expression was gloomy. He didn't expect these people to be unafraid of the cosmic sect behind him. Moreover, Ji Feng also discovered that this cultivator's cultivation level was clearly lower than his, but he was actually at a disadvantage in that attack. Either hand over the calamity crystal or scram, the leader sneered. Ji Feng's face flushed red. Yun Chuyu was still behind him, so how could he be afraid? Ji Feng was a cultivator who had survived 2 wind disasters. Logically speaking, his strength shouldn't be weaker than the leader's. He believed that he was only pushed back by luck. You want us to scram? It's not that easy. Ji Feng snorted and took out a long saber. With a stomp of his right foot, he flew toward the cultivator in front of him. The other 8 cultivators guarding the gate sneered, as if they weren't worried about the leader at all. You're dead. Ji Feng was as fast as the wind. In an instant, he was in front of the cultivator. The long saber in his hand was like a ray of light as it slashed toward the cultivator's neck. Unfortunately, the cultivator didn't move. He just looked at Ji Feng indifferently. Ji Feng thought that the cultivator was scared stiff, and he felt even more proud. Senior brother Ji Feng, watch your back. Suddenly, a cry of alarm sounded. Ji Feng, who was originally proud, stiffened. Then, he felt pain in his right hand. The long saber that was supposed to fall suddenly flew out. More accurately, even his entire right hand flew out. Ah! Ji Feng screamed and hurriedly retreated. Only then did he realize that it was a small axe that had cut off his right hand. Moreover, this small axe was floating beside the cultivator. The cultivator grabbed Ji Feng's right hand and summoned a ball of fire to burn it. He lightly weighed Ji Feng's long saber divine weapon and clicked his tongue in wonder. This saber is not bad. Divine sense. How can you use divine sense? Aren't cultivators below the void sky realm unable to use divine sense here? Ji Feng's heart sank. His eyes were filled with fear. If his divine sense wasn't suppressed here, the cultivator in front of him wouldn't have been able to use that small axe to cut off his right hand so easily. Unfortunately, he had lost his divine sense and could only use his vision to judge danger like an ordinary person. That was why his right hand was easily chopped off by the cultivator in front of him. What a country bumpkin. In this place, cultivation is nothing. Only a powerful divine sense is the way to go. Do you think you're stronger than Brother Yang just because you've survived 2 hurricanes? What a frog at the bottom of a well, one of the cultivators behind said with a ridiculing tone. The cultivator who was called Brother Yang by the cultivator behind him casually waved his long saber and said indifferently, "Little rookie, in this place, all cultivators below the void sky realm have the same starting point. Even if you are a powerful true god 3 disasters who has survived 15 wind disasters, you are no exception. But once you enter the trial grounds, your divine sense will be suppressed to the point that you won't be able to leave. Perhaps even some first disaster true gods might be able to kill you. Your pride in the outside world means nothing here. I've been cultivating here for a much longer time than you. Although my aptitude is limited and I can't advance to the void sky realm so quickly, I've tempered my divine soul to an extremely powerful state. Now, my divine sense can extend to about 5 meters. Although 5 meters might seem insignificant, I can kill a rookie like you who can't even extend your divine sense with a raise of my hand. Ji Feng's face was pale and bloodless. Even Yun Chuyu and the others behind him didn't look any better. This was their first time entering the trial grounds and they thought that everyone couldn't extend their divine sense. Now, they learned from Brother Yang that it was possible for cultivators below the void sky realm to extend their divine sense. In this situation where most cultivators' divine sense was suppressed, being able to extend one's divine sense was definitely an invincible existence. Hand over 50 disaster crystals and I won't make things difficult for you. I'll let you pass through this gate, Brother Yang said indifferently. Ji Feng frowned. He didn't have 10 calamity crystals on him. He had obtained 6 calamity crystals from the stone tablet, but he had used 4 of them when he entered this place. He only had 2 calamity crystals left. However, Ji Feng knew that his 2 junior brothers and that junior sister only had 8 disaster crystals in total. Even if he asked, he couldn't take all of their disaster crystals. Otherwise, they would definitely be eliminated. Senior apprentice brother Ji Feng, you are the strongest among the 5 of us. I have discussed it with my 2 junior apprentice brothers. We can take out the calamity crystal for you. The female cultivator with average looks transmitted her voice to the gloomy Ji Feng. Ji Feng's expression relaxed and he replied, "Thank you, junior sister he. After I enter this time, I'll definitely come out to pick you up after I get enough disaster crystals. Senior brother, we naturally believe in you. However, I remember that you only have 2 disaster crystals on you, right? It seems that you're still missing 3 disaster crystals." The woman surnamed he suddenly reminded him. "I'm also worried about this," Ji Feng said helplessly. "Senior brother Ji, didn't Yun Chuyu say that she had 3 disaster crystals on her? We helped her so much in the canyon before. Now it's time for her to repay us," the female cultivator surnamed he said again. Ji Feng was startled and revealed a look of hesitation. When he met Yun Chuyu, Ji Feng was stunned by her temperament. When he learned that she was only a loose cultivator, Ji Feng regarded her as his exclusive property and wanted to make her his Dao companion in the future. However, the situation had changed and he was blocked at the entrance of the trial ground. He was really unwilling to accept this. After thinking about it, he decided to sacrifice Yun Chuyu. Although he had a very good impression of Yun Chuyu, he had never seen her real appearance. Naturally, he couldn't give up on entering the trial ground just because of this. Yun Chuyu was extremely intelligent and naturally saw Ji Feng and the female cultivator surnamed he talking to each other. Although she didn't know the specific content of their conversation, from the way they frequently looked at each other, she was afraid that the person they were talking about was her. As for why they were talking to each other, it was obvious that they didn't want her to know. They were talking about her but didn't want her to know. Obviously, what they were talking about was definitely not good for her. Thinking of this, Yun Chuyu quietly took out the escape talisman Zhuoan gave her and hid it in her palm. "Miss Yun, you saw that we helped you so much in the canyon. Now, we need your help with something. We hope that you can help us." The female cultivator surnamed he turned her head and smiled at Yun Chuyu. Yun Chuyu frowned slightly and said calmly, "The 4 of you have indeed helped me a lot. What do you want me to help with?" The female cultivator surnamed he said indifferently, "Senior brother Ji only has 2 disaster crystals on him, and the 3 of us can only take out 5 disaster crystals. However, the entrance to this place requires 10 per person, so we hope that you can take out 3 disaster crystals to help us." Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes were filled with anger as she said, "I only have 3 disaster crystals on me. If I give them all to you, won't I be eliminated immediately?" The female cultivator surnamed he smiled faintly and said, "Miss Yun, what are you saying? You are so weak. If you have them, they will be taken away by others. Why don't you just hand them over and save yourself? When this nebula tournament is over, you can come to the Chenkuan sect. We will definitely treat you well." Just as the female cultivator finished speaking, the other 2 men quietly moved behind Yun Chuyu to prevent her from running away. "Chuyu, don't worry. The 3 disaster crystals you gave us won't go to waste. After I advance to the Void Sky Realm, my status in the Chenkuan sect will also rise. At that time, I will bring you to the Chenkuan sect and directly make you an inner disciple. How about it?" Ji Feng said calmly. Yun Chuyu was so angry that she laughed. She coldly looked at Ji Feng and the others and said, "Sorry, if it were 2, I could still give them to you. However, 3 is out of the question. If that's the case, then don't blame us. Attack." The female cultivator surnamed he sneered. She kicked off the ground and rushed towards Yun Chuyu. The other 2 men also came from behind her. Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of determination. Divine power surged out from her hands and she blasted out a palm to each side. Poochie. The four of them immediately clashed. Yun Chuyu felt a sweet taste in her throat as she spat out a mouthful of blood. The veil on her face was pulled back, revealing her pitilessly beautiful face. She, on the other hand, was sent flying backwards like a withered flower. So beautiful, the two men who originally wanted to attack Yun Chuyu froze the moment they saw Yun Chuyu's face under the veil. They were stunned. Not only them, but even Ji Yu Feng and the 9 cultivators guarding the door pillars had similar expressions. Die. The female cultivator surnamed He came back to her senses. Her eyes burned with jealousy. She suddenly rushed out and blasted out a palm without showing any mercy. The moment Yun Chuyu was sent flying, she immediately crushed the escape talisman in her hand. Then, she turned into a stream of light and rushed towards the canyon behind her. It's an escape talisman. Let's chase her. We can't let her escape. Ji Yu Feng had already come back to his senses. He immediately chased in the direction Yun Chuyu had fled. At this moment, Ji Yu Feng's heart was burning with passion. Yun Chuyu was indeed very beautiful. He made up his mind to make this woman his cultivation partner. Even if he couldn't do it, he still wanted to have a night of fun with her. Such a beautiful female cultivator was rare in the West Yu. He wasn't willing to let her go. The moment Ji Yu Feng rushed out, the female cultivator surnamed He and the other two followed closely behind. Brother Yang, that female cultivator is really beautiful. Only you are worthy of having such a female cultivator. What right does that trash named Ji Yu Feng have to have her? The 9 cultivators in front of the door pillars came back to their senses, and one of them said to Brother Yang. Brother Yang's eyes flashed, and he said in a deep voice, "The 8 of you continue to guard here. I'll go take a look. If there's a chance to be a hero saving a damsel in distress, I don't mind acting." As he spoke, Brother Yang stepped forward with his right foot and slowly followed. This person had a divine sense, so it would be easy for him to catch up with Ji Yu Feng and the others. However, he didn't. Instead, he slowly followed behind. In the canyon, there were sparse withered trees growing under a cliff. Yun Chuyu landed under a withered tree. Her face was pale, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. She collapsed beside the withered tree. Chapter 1995. Gallows. We can't stop here. Otherwise, they will eventually find us. Yun Chuyu forced herself to stand up and looked around. She realized that other than the barren cliffs, there was only the swamp in front of them. Swamp. Seeing the pitch-black swamp, Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes showed hesitation. In the end, she made up her mind and went in. Ji Yu Feng and the other 3 could not release their divine consciousness and could only rely on their sight to find her. As long as she hid in the swamp and did not move, she did not believe that Ji Yu Feng and the other 3 would continue to search in the swamp. Not long after, Ji Yu Feng and the other 3 arrived. Not here. Let's continue forward. Ji Yu Feng frowned slightly and did not pay attention to the swamp. The 4 of them left without stopping. In the swamp, after Yun Chuyu saw that the 4 of them had left, she let out a sigh of relief. Just as she was about to come out, she realized that there was something wriggling under the swamp. What is it? Yun Chuyu's heart trembled and she quickly left the swamp. However, before she could completely leave the swamp, a black tentacle suddenly swept out and wrapped around her right leg. Yun Chuyu was lifted up. Her injuries were quite serious, and the tentacle was very tight. She could not break free at all. The entire swamp surged, and Yun Chuyu was horrified to discover that a terrifying giant beast had emerged from the swamp. The giant beast looked like an octopus. It had a huge head with a pair of oily green eyes and sharp fangs. Under its head, countless tentacles grew out, densely packed together. It was exceptionally terrifying. Gallows. Why is there such a giant beast in this place? Brother Yang, who was leisurely walking over, happened to see this scene. When he saw the giant beast in the swamp, his expression was extremely ugly. This beast was called Gallows, and it was an extremely famous, terrifying giant beast in the trial grounds. It was mostly seen above the 5th level of the trial grounds and was a very difficult fellow to deal with. Brother Yang could release his divine consciousness 5 meters away, and his strength was much stronger than other true gods. However, he knew very well that if he were to face Gallows, he would definitely die. God is jealous of her beauty. This beauty is dead for sure. Brother Yang kept his distance from the quagmire and sighed while shaking his head. Zhuowen passed through the canyon and met many cultivators along the way. However, as long as they didn't provoke him, Zhuowen didn't attack them. Of course, if there were cultivators who wanted to rob Zhuowen because they had more people, Zhuowen would not be soft-hearted and would rob them all back. Therefore, in just a few short days, Zhuowen already had 75 pieces of disaster crystals on him. Zhuowen had also heard from some of the cultivators that this was not the inner part of the trial by fire, but the outer part. It was said that the entrance to the trial by fire was at the end of the canyon. However, there seemed to be quite powerful cultivators guarding there. If one wanted to enter the trial grounds, they would have to pay 10 disaster crystals. The cultivators scattered in the canyon were either new cultivators or those who had less than 10 calamity crystals on them and planned to rob others to gather enough calamity crystals before entering the trial ground. This was also the reason why Zhuowen was often targeted along the way. In this kind of place where one's spiritual sense was suppressed, one's cultivation was no longer an advantage. Instead, it was their numbers that gave them an advantage. Seeing that Zhuowen was all alone, who else could these cultivators go for but Zhuowen? Yun Chuyu couldn't have escaped so far. I know her injuries. Suddenly, Zhuowen's divine sense detected a voice. When he heard the name Yun Chuyu, Zhuowen's heart sank. At this moment, Ji Yufeng and the others were not far from Zhuowen. The one who had just spoken was the female cultivator surnamed He. However, before she could finish speaking, a terrifying killing intent instantly descended, causing her body to tremble. Her face was pale as she looked at the young man in front of her. Not only her, but Ji Yufeng and the others were not much better. This killing intent was too terrifying, and it contained a powerful divine sense that suppressed them, making it difficult for them to move. "Senior, why are you looking for us?" Ji Yufeng reacted and hurriedly cupped his fists towards Zhuowen. This person could release his divine sense, so he was definitely someone on the same level as Brother Yang. Such a true god could easily kill the 4 of them in this place. "Where's Yun Chuyu?" Zhuowen asked with a gloomy gaze. Hearing this, Ji Yufeng and the others' hearts sank. Didn't Yun Chuyu say that she was a rogue cultivator? When did such a powerful existence appear behind her? "Senior, you've misunderstood. We don't know any Yun Chuyu," Ji Yufeng hurriedly said. "Pa." Unfortunately, just as Ji Yufeng finished speaking, he was slapped hard on the right side of his face. He fell to the ground and spat out a few teeth. "Where's Yun Chuyu?" Zhuowen's gaze became more and more gloomy, and his killing intent became more and more terrifying, causing the 4 of them to tremble in fear. "We're also looking for Yun Chuyu, but we still haven't found her. Senior, please don't kill us. We don't mean any harm," the female cultivator with the surname He hurriedly said. Zhuowen completely ignored the female cultivator with the surname His pleas for mercy. His powerful divine sense turned into ropes, imprisoning all 4 of them. Then, he brought the 4 of them, who were unable to move, towards the front of the canyon. Along the way, he did not find any trace of Yun Chuyu. Clearly, Yun Chuyu should be somewhere in front of the canyon. Zhuowen's expression was anxious. He even spread out his torch dragon wings, and his entire person turned into an afterimage. Not long after, Zhuowen approached the swamp where Yun Chuyu was previously. He also saw the giant beast, Gallows, in the swamp. At the same time, his divine sense also swept over Yun Chuyu, whose legs were entangled by Gallows. Although Yun Chuyu's entire body was covered in mud and her face was pitch black, making it impossible to see her appearance clearly, his divine sense was extremely powerful. Naturally, he immediately recognized Yun Chuyu. Especially when he saw that Gallows had actually opened his mouth wide, intending to swallow Yun Chuyu whole, Zhuowen did not even think about it and took out the embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword. The 12 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword turned into a terrifying vortex of killing intent and blasted into Gallows' tentacles, instantly severing them. Yun Chuyu also fell into the swamp. Roar! Gallows roared angrily and turned his head to stare at Zhuowen, who was rushing over. Countless tentacles swept towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen was not afraid of Gallows at all. The torch dragon wings spread out to the extreme. Zhuowen was like a ghost as he dodged the incoming tentacles. The 12 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword that had originally swept out returned to his body, constantly cutting Gallows's tentacles. At the same time, Zhuowen constantly closed the distance between him and Gallows. The moment Zhuowen got close to Gallows, he took out the glorious purple galaxy sword and slashed down. A purple moon rose and slammed into Gallows's head. Unfortunately, Gallows's head was extremely hard. Not only did the purple moon fail to slash Gallows, but it also dissipated. Gallows roared angrily and spat out a ball of green venom. Zhuowen dodged and passed through the venom. Then, he circled behind Gallows and picked up Yun Chuyu, instantly leaving the swamp. Ah! No, save us. Zhuowen was busy with Yun Chuyu and did not care about Ji Yufeng and the others at all. At this moment, after Zhuowen saved Yun Chuyu and left the swamp, Ji Yufeng and the others were abandoned by Zhuowen and eventually became Gallows's venting objects. Zhuowen silently looked at Ji Yufeng and the others who were swallowed by Gallows, then turned to look at the stunned brother Yang behind him and said, "Who are you? Are you also chasing after Chuyu?" Brother Yang broke out in a cold sweat. Just now, when Zhuowen was controlling the embryo of the no-beginning demonic gold sword, he had seen it clearly. This guy could definitely release his divine sense, and his divine sense was much stronger than his own. You've misunderstood. I'm the gatekeeper of the trial ground. I saw that this lady was being chased by Ji Yufeng and the other three, so I purposely came to lend a helping hand. I didn't expect to meet Gallows here. Brother Yang hurriedly waved his hand. Roar! At this moment, after swallowing Ji Yufeng and the others, Gallows turned his head. His green eyes stared straight at Zhuowen, sending chills down one's spine. Brother Yang felt a chill down his spine and kept retreating. However, what surprised him was that the young man who suddenly appeared in front of him did not run away. This person clearly could not blast open Gallows's head, so why didn't he run away? Zhuowen looked at Gallows indifferently. His true form was Devour, a powerful giant beast in the starry sky. How could he be afraid of this so-called Gallows? Roar! Zhuowen also let out a low roar. A flow of pressure from Devour burst out. This pressure formed the shadow of a giant beast, emerging behind Zhuowen. Gallows stopped roaring and even began to shiver. He looked at Devour's shadow in fright. He whimpered and then crawled into the swamp, not daring to come out. Want to run? Do you think it's that easy? Zhuowen sneered. He took a step forward and waved his sleeve. A terrifying devouring vortex emerged and swallowed the entire swamp. Gallows, who was hiding in the swamp, shivered. He didn't have his previous majesty. Zhuowen's mind flickered. The 12 embryos of the no-beginning demonic gold sword turned into a vortex of murderous intent, drilling into Gallows' eyes. Gallows' head was so tough that even the glorious amethyst galaxy sword couldn't cut it. He could only start with Gallows' eyes. Gallows had been frightened by Devour's pressure. At this moment, he wasn't prepared at all. When the vortex of murderous intent formed by the no-beginning demonic gold sword embryos completely entered the beast's eyes, Gallows let out a mournful roar and kept rolling on the ground. The vortex of murderous intent wreaked havoc in Gallows' body, almost turning it into a mess. In the end, Gallows' head exploded, and he died completely. He was killed just like that. Brother Yang opened his mouth wide, looking at this scene in disbelief. At this moment, he looked at Zhuowen with awe and fear. Brother Yang wanted to leave, but Zhuowen's consciousness had locked onto him. He didn't dare to move. He could only smile bitterly and wait in place. Brother Zhuo, it's great that you're okay. Yun Chuyu reacted. She curled up on Zhuowen's body and cried. Zhuowen looked at Yun Chuyu with a sigh. He could feel that Yun Chuyu's injuries were quite serious. Coupled with her unstable emotions, it had already become an internal injury. After Zhuowen used his divine power to completely remove the swamp on Yun Chuyu's surface, he found that Yun Chuyu's face was very pale and bloodless. Chapter 1996. Exploitation. Brother Yang's face was pale as he remained motionless. Zhuowen's divine sense was firmly locked onto him, so he didn't dare to move. His divine sense could only extend to 5 meters, but he was still enveloped by the young man's divine sense even though he was nearly 100 meters away from him. It was clear how terrifying this young man was. Zhuowen checked on Yun Chuyu again. After confirming that she was fine, he turned around and stared coldly at Brother Yang behind him. "Friend, this has nothing to do with me. I didn't touch this girl," Brother Yang hurriedly said. Zhuowen's mouth was full of a cold smile. This person secretly followed Yun Chuyu. He didn't believe that this person had good intentions. If Gaylord hadn't appeared, Zhuowen was sure that this person would have attacked Yun Chuyu. Zhuowen didn't have a good temper with this kind of person. "Brother Zhuowen, this person is the cultivator guarding the outer pillar of the trial grounds. He can also release his divine sense, but it can only extend to 5 meters. Yun Chuyu transmitted her voice to Zhuowen. Zhuowen was startled. He looked Brother Yang up and down and said in a low voice, "You can release your divine sense as well?" "As far as I know, only cultivators above the virtual sky realm can release their divine sense. Divine senses below the virtual sky realm are basically suppressed." The meaning of Zhuowen's words was obvious. He wanted to ask this person how he could release his divine sense even though he wasn't at the virtual sky realm. Brother Yang cursed in his heart. Zhuowen could release his divine sense himself, but he was asking him instead. However, Brother Yang didn't dare to not answer. The young man's divine sense was too powerful, and it was firmly locked onto him. If he felt that something was wrong, he would be killed by the young man. "Friend, don't you know that you can temper your divine sense in the trial grounds? There are a total of 18 levels in the trial grounds. The higher you go, the better the effect of tempering your divine sense. Moreover, there are more calamity crystals. It is said that calamity crystals are everywhere on the 18th level. Brother Yang hurriedly explained. When he mentioned the 18th level, his eyes revealed a yearning. "In other words, your divine sense was tempered in the trial grounds?" Zhuowen asked calmly. Brother Yang quickly replied, "Yes. However, I was only able to break through the first floor. I couldn't break through the second floor no matter what. The main reason is that my divine sense is too weak. Also, the entrance to the second floor is too difficult." Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He was secretly surprised. From Brother Yang's tone, he could tell that this canyon was not the real training ground. The real training ground was probably at the end of the canyon. Generally speaking, how far can a void sky cultivator's spiritual sense extend when they first enter this place? Zhuowen asked indifferently. Brother Yang thought for a while and said, "Those who have just entered the virtual sky are about 30 meters tall. If they reach the virtual sky for the first time, they can reach 50 meters. If they reach the virtual sky for the second time, they can reach 80 meters. If they reach the virtual sky for the third time, they can reach over 100 meters." At this point, Brother Yang glanced at Zhuowen and thought that this person was definitely an expert who had reached the third step in the void sky. He was only pretending to be a pig in front of Brother Yang. He did not believe that a one-calamity true god would be able to extend his divine sense so far when he had just entered this place. Moreover, after void sky experts enter the trial grounds, they can usually break through to the later floors. Their divine sense will also become stronger as they temper it. Brother Yang chuckled and said, "Of course, in terms of benefits, true gods benefit the most from the trial grounds because the calamity crystals here are much more effective for true gods. As long as they have enough calamity crystals, true gods can quickly pass through calamities and become stronger." Zhuowen nodded and continued, "Since the trial grounds have 18 levels, has anyone entered the 18th level?" Brother Yang frowned and shook his head. "I have stayed in the trial grounds for several hundred years, but I have never heard of anyone entering the 18th level. At least until now, no one in Zhongyu has. However, this time, the trial grounds are open to the other 4 areas. Perhaps a world-shaking genius will appear and enter the 18th level." Zhuowen's gaze was calm as he said, "Then take me there now." Brother Yang looked hesitant and reluctantly looked at the already dead Gallo. After a series of obsequious words, he decided to lead the way. Zhuowen's gaze was very sharp, so he naturally caught Brother Yang's expression. Whoosh! Zhuowen jumped down and landed beside Gallo's corpse. Soon after, his powerful divine sense began to check Gallo's body over and over again. Suddenly, Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly. Soon after, the glorious amethyst galaxy sword in his right hand slashed at the vicinity of Gallo's eyes. Then, his right hand groped around inside and took out a palm-sized irregular black stone. The color of this black stone was very similar to a calamity crystal. Moreover, what Zhuowen praised was that the aura of this stone was almost exactly the same as that of a calamity crystal. Moreover, the aura of this stone was purer than that of a calamity crystal. Brother Yang also noticed Zhuowen's behavior and sighed in his heart. He knew that his unintentional action just now had exposed his intentions. Zhuowen arrived in front of Brother Yang and asked indifferently, "This is also a calamity crystal?" Brother Yang cupped his fists and said, "This is a calamity crystal core. The energy inside is even purer than that of a calamity crystal. There are many calamity crystals hidden deep underground in the trial grounds. The exotic beasts in the trial grounds all evolve and grow by devouring calamity crystals. The exotic beasts here devour calamity crystals all year round, so a calamity crystal core is formed in their bodies. This is the essence of a calamity crystal." Zhuowen nodded and unceremoniously put it away under Brother Yang's envious gaze. "Lead the way." After saying that, Zhuowen helped Yunchuyu up. Under Brother Yang's lead, they arrived in front of the gate at the end of the canyon. Brother Yang, the 8 black-robed cultivators who were originally sitting cross-legged in front of the gate, noticed Brother Yang's arrival and stood up one after another. However, when they saw Zhuowen and Yunchuyu behind Brother Yang, their gazes all became alert. Zhuowen raised his head and looked at the gate in front of him. He knew that this was the entrance to the trial grounds. "Everyone, please calm down. This is Brother Zhuo. He's entering the trial grounds this time, so please don't block the gate," Brother Yang said somewhat awkwardly. "Brother Yang, what's wrong with you? If you want to enter the gate, you need 10 calamity crystals. This person isn't a void sky expert, so why can't he enter?" One of the black-robed cultivators said unhappily. Brother Yang's expression darkened. Just as he was about to reprimand them, Zhuowen suddenly said, "So you have this kind of rule." Before Zhuowen could finish speaking, he was interrupted by the black-robed cultivator who spoke just now. "Of course. If you know what's good for you, take out 20 calamity crystals and leave the female cultivator beside you behind. Get in." Brother Yang had a bad feeling. He quickly turned around and cupped his hands towards Zhuowen. Brother Zhuo, this person doesn't know any better. Please forgive him. I'll immediately teach this arrogant guy a lesson." Brother Yang's words immediately stunned the 8 cultivators in front of the gate. The young man in front of them was only a 1 calamity true god, while Brother Yang was a 3 calamities true god who could release his divine sense. Why was Brother Yang so respectful and even a little reverent to this young man? "There's no need to trouble you," Zhuowen said coldly as his powerful divine sense swept out. The black-robed cultivator who spoke rudely suddenly cried out in alarm. He felt his whole body relax and his whole body was suspended in the air. Moreover, his head was facing down as if his right leg was lifted by someone. Divine sense. What a powerful divine sense. The 7 black-robed cultivators involuntarily took a few steps back. They could feel that this young man's divine sense was even stronger than their Brother Yang's. No wonder their Brother Yang was so respectful to this person. They didn't expect him to be so powerful. The cultivator who was taught a lesson was even more regretful and quickly begged for mercy. Zhuowen sneered and threw the black-robed cultivator to the ground. He said indifferently, "This friend reminded me that to enter the trial ground, disaster crystals are indeed needed." Speaking until here, Zhuowen stretched out his right hand and continued, "I won't be too ruthless. Take out 90% of the disaster crystals you have. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless." Brother Yang's heart trembled. He cursed the black-robed cultivator for offending Zhuowen at this juncture and causing them to lose disaster crystals. Facing Zhuowen, he didn't dare to not hand over the disaster crystals. It was too easy for this person to kill him. "Sir, this is 90% of the disaster crystals I have on me. Please count them." Brother Yang's posture was very humble. He also changed his address from friend to sir. Zhuowen took the disaster crystals from Brother Yang and found that there were more than 400 disaster crystals, which made him quite satisfied. With Brother Yang as an example, the other 8 cultivators eagerly delivered the calamity crystals to him. Especially the cultivator who was taught a lesson. Although he was grimacing, the smile on his face was the thickest. The total amount of disaster crystal stones handed over by the 8 cultivators was more than 100. Including Brother Yang's, Zhuowen had obtained more than 500 disaster crystal stones. This harvest could not be said to be not generous. "Chuyu, take these 100 disaster crystals, just in case." Zhuowen took out 100 disaster crystals and handed them to Yun Chuyu. Yun Chuyu hurriedly shook her head and said flatteringly, "Brother Zhuo, this is too much. I can't take it." "Take it. If you want to become stronger, you need these disaster crystals." "Don't you want to become stronger?" Zhuowen said indifferently. Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes flashed. After a slight hesitation, she still took the disaster crystals. She carried a blood feud on her back, and her enemy Lei Qi was so powerful. She had to become stronger as soon as possible. Otherwise, she wouldn't have a chance to take revenge. "Sir, are you going in now?" Brother Yang smiled wholeheartedly, but in his heart, he couldn't wait for Zhuowen to leave. Zhuowen shook his head and said, "I'll go in later. In any case, I still have 50 years here. Let me finish absorbing the disaster crystals first." After saying that, Zhuowen brought Yun Chuyu to a place not far from the gate. At the same time, he used the 10,000 engulfment to set up a shielding array. Within the shielding array, he set up a level 3 trap array. Inside the trap array, he also set up a level 3 killing array. Brother Yang was quite strong, but if he wanted to break into this array, he would definitely be entangled. When that happened, Zhuowen would be able to easily kill him. A level 3 array? Chapter 1997. 6 Lightning Disasters. Big Brother Zhuo, you. Looking at the formation around them, Yun Chuyu looked at Zhuowen in confusion. "Chuyu, the trial grounds are definitely filled with difficulties. Generally speaking, the majority of those who enter are looking for disaster crystals. Since we now have enough disaster crystals, we should work hard to increase our strength first," Zhuowen said with a smile. Yun Chuyu nodded. She could vaguely guess Zhuowen's thoughts. Her attention was focused on the disaster crystals Zhuowen had given her, and her beautiful eyes glowed. While Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu were cultivating inside the formation, Brother Yang and the others could only stay outside and watch gloomily. Time slowly passed, and quite a few newcomers entered. Brother Yang and the others naturally did not let go of the disaster crystals on these newcomers. Of course, they did not go too far. They only collected 10 disaster crystals per person according to the old rules. Zhuowen had absorbed 400 disaster crystals, which took him 3 months. His aura had also become much more terrifying. In the process of absorbing the disaster crystals, Zhuowen had already sent down the 3rd lightning disaster. However, Zhuowen had used all life formless to hide his aura and hide it from the lightning disaster. After absorbing 400 calamity crystals, Zhuowen's aura had soared to an extremely terrifying degree. The 4th and 5th lightning calamity had followed, but he had been suppressing them all this time. It was the same for Yun Chuyu. After absorbing 100 disaster crystals, Yun Chuyu had sent down 3 lightning disasters. However, all of them were covered by all life formless, so the lightning disaster did not completely descend. 10 disaster crystals. If you can't take them out, then get the hell out of here. At this moment, Brother Yang and the 8 black-robed cultivators were still sitting cross-legged in front of the gate pillar. There were 2 cultivators standing in front of the gate pillar. They were a man and a woman. The man looked ordinary, but his aura was quite vast. His clothes were also extremely luxurious. It was obvious that he came from an extraordinary background. The woman wore a bright red silk dress. Her figure was graceful, and her eyes were filled with a hint of seduction. You might not know who I am, right? I am Liang Dan, a disciple of the Void Flush Peak. My father is an elder of the Void Flush Peak. I hope that the few of you can make things convenient for us. The man was very polite, but the arrogance in his eyes was very obvious. It was obvious that this man was very confident in his identity. The charming woman beside him watched everything in silence. She was well aware of how powerful the Void Rush Peak was. The Void-Piercing Peak was also one of the 10 great sects of the Starfield. However, it was not a force of the Dongyu sect, but a force of the Shiyu sect. With the backing of the Void-Flushing Peak, she believed that the 9 men would still give her some face. Unfortunately, Brother Yang did not even bother to look at the man as he gave him a slap. Liang Dan's face was flushed red. He did not expect Brother Yang to be so arrogant. He attacked without saying a word. Thinking of this, Liang Dan snorted in his heart. He moved his right leg, intending to avoid Brother Yang's slap. But soon, Liang Dan realized that something was wrong. His entire body stiffened, and his feet were rooted to the ground. Divine sense. You can actually use divine sense. You're just a true god. How is this possible? Liang Dan shouted in shock. Unfortunately, he was interrupted as soon as he opened his mouth. Brother Yang's slap landed on his face ruthlessly. Slap. Liang Dan fell to the ground in a sorry state. His right cheek was swollen, and he spat out more than 10 teeth. Is the Void Flush Peak that great? 3 months ago, I even beat up the few fellows from the Heaven and Earth sect. Who do you think you are? Even if I kill you here, the Peak Master of the Void Flush Peak won't dare to come to Zhongyu to look for me directly. If you're still so hesitant, I'll kill you directly. Brother Yang stood up and walked toward Liang Dan with a murderous look on his face. Liang Dan was so scared that he wet his pants. He did not care about his image as he moved toward Brother Yang. Trash. If you can't hand over 10 calamity crystals, get out of here and go to the canyon behind to rob others, Brother Yang said in disdain. The 9 black-robed cultivators behind him roared with laughter, causing Liang Dan's face to turn green and red. However, he did not dare to do anything. The charming lady hurried to Liang Dan's side. Her face was pale. She did not expect the Void Flush Peak to be useless in this trial ground. Boom. Suddenly, the shielding array near the door pillar exploded, and 2 figures walked out from it. Brother Yang also noticed them, and his face changed slightly. He knew that Zhuowen had come out from his seclusion. Rumble. However, before Brother Yang could go forward to welcome them, a terrifying sound of thunder came from above their heads. Then, a huge lightning gate was formed. Not long after this lightning gate was formed, another lightning gate was formed. One after another, lightning gates appeared. There were a total of 6 lightning gates floating in the sky, and they were arranged neatly. Countless black thunderbolts lingered around them, and it looked extremely strange. 6 lightning calamities stacked together? This. Brother Yang was shocked. He quickly stepped back and looked at the 6 lightning gates floating in the sky in disbelief. To a true god, a lightning calamity was extremely terrifying. Every lightning calamity was fatal. Therefore, when a true god went through a lightning calamity, they would be extremely careful. They would only go through a lightning calamity after making sufficient preparations. Moreover, there would definitely not be a true god who would go through multiple lightning calamities. This was because the terror of a lightning calamity stacked together was not as simple as 1 + 1. It was absolutely terrifying. Now, Zhuowen went through 6 lightning calamities as soon as he came out. Wasn't that just courting death? Although Brother Yang knew that Zhuowen was indeed powerful, he also felt that this person was courting death. The others present were also shocked. Obviously, they also felt that Zhuowen's method was too dangerous and too bold. Brother Zhuo, Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief. She first looked at the 6 lightning gates in the sky, then looked at the violent energy on Zhuowen's body. She could feel that the 3 lightning calamities that belonged to her were not targeted at her, but at Zhuowen. Chuyu, stay away for now. Wait for me to go through this lightning calamity, Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Yun Chuyu's eyes reddened. Her heart was filled with gratitude. She knew that Zhuowen was helping her go through the lightning calamity. Ever since she was young, no one had ever treated her as well as Zhuowen. At this moment, she had the urge to cry. Stay away from me first. Otherwise, you will distract me. Seeing Yun Chuyu's sad expression, Zhuowen could vaguely guess what Yun Chuyu was thinking. He felt a headache coming on. The reason why he helped Yun Chuyu go through the lightning calamity was actually selfish. His Heaven's Thunder Eye could rely on the lightning calamity to quickly accumulate the energy of the heavenly lightning. He took the lightning calamity for Yun Chuyu because he wanted to help his Heaven's Thunder Eye accumulate more heavenly lightning. Of course, even if he had the Heaven's Thunder Eye, facing 6 lightning calamities stacked together still made him feel pressured. Yun Chuyu did not insist. It was just as Zhuowen said. She was really hindering him from going through the lightning calamity by staying by Zhuowen's side. Is this guy crazy? Liang Dan, who was originally scared shitless by Brother Yang, forgot about his embarrassment as he stared blankly at Zhuowen, who was preparing to go through the lightning calamity. It's him. It's actually him. The charming woman standing beside Liang Dan trembled the moment she saw Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen's attention was completely focused on the 6 lightning gates in the sky. Rumble. The 6 lightning gates opened at the same time. 6 terrifying lightning bolts descended from all directions with Zhuowen as the center and gathered towards Zhuowen. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. With a wave of his sleeve, 5 powerful devouring vortexes appeared beside him. The 5 devouring vortexes blocked 5 of the lightning bolts. The Heaven's Thunder Eye released a powerful devouring power and swallowed the lightning bolt in front. The Heaven's Thunder Eye's devouring speed was very fast. After swallowing that lightning bolt, it continued to surge towards the other 5 lightning bolts. Soon, the 5 lightning bolts were completely devoured by the Heaven's Thunder Eye. At the same time, the 6 lightning gates released the second wave of lightning bolts. Zhuowen had absorbed so many calamity crystals that his strength was much stronger than before. In addition, the Heaven's Thunder Eye could restrain the lightning calamity. Therefore, it was not particularly difficult for Zhuowen to deal with the next wave of lightning bolts. Wave after wave of lightning bolts descended. Although Zhuowen looked relaxed, the occasional black lightning bolt was able to create a huge crater when it landed on the ground. This showed how terrifying the lightning bolts were. After dealing with the 9th wave of lightning bolts, the lightning gates became much quieter. However, Zhuowen did not let down his guard. He had gone through a few lightning calamities and knew that there were 10 waves of lightning bolts brewing in the lightning gates. Of course, the 10th wave was also the most terrifying wave. The lightning gates brewed for a full 10 breaths of time before the 10th wave of lightning bolts finally descended. Each lightning gate had 10 lightning bolts descending. The 6 lightning gates had a total of 60 lightning bolts. Moreover, these 60 lightning bolts were not stationary. Instead, they intertwined and rotated at high speed, forming a terrifying lightning ball in the shape of a grid. The surface of the lightning ball was constantly flowing with lightning bolts. It was as if the slightest touch could completely cut all matter into pieces. Big Brother Zhuo, Yun Chuyu's beautiful eyes were slightly red. She could feel that the lightning ball formed by the 10th wave of lightning calamity was extremely terrifying. I wonder if the Heaven's Thunder Eye can withstand the 10th wave of lightning balls. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He could also feel the power of the falling lightning balls. Chapter 1998. Meeting Sequoia again. Zhuowen did not expect the Heavenly Thunder Eye to leave his glabella. Unfortunately, the Heavenly Thunder Eye was too fast. Zhuowen did not have time to catch it before it left Zhuowen's range. BZZT BZZT BZZT. The Heavenly Thunder Eye dove into the ball of lightning and exploded with the sound of thunder. The falling ball of lightning was instantly annihilated while the Heavenly Thunder Eye flew out unscathed and returned to Zhuowen's glabella. Zhuowen checked with his divine sense and was pleasantly surprised to find that the number of bolts of lightning in the Heavenly Thunder Eye had increased from 2 to 20. This was a tenfold increase. With so many bolts of lightning, if Zhuowen met Lei Qi again, he would not be in such a sorry state like last time. Of course, it was still wishful thinking to use these bolts of lightning to fight Lei Qi. After all, the difference between Zhuowen and Lei Qi was not small. It passed. Big brother Zhuo is amazing, Yun Chuyu exclaimed in surprise. As for brother Yang and the others in front of the gate, they were all stunned. They looked at Zhuowen as if he was a monster. At this moment, Zhuowen was satisfied. The heavenly thunder eyes power had increased greatly, which meant that his trump card had become much stronger. Naturally, he was happy. Sir. Zhuowen brought Yun Chuyu to the front of the doorpost. Brother Yang immediately led the 8 black-robed cultivators to welcome them and spoke in a deep voice. Zhuowen nodded, and then he glanced at Liang Dan and the female cultivator behind him. Zhuowen especially glanced at the female cultivator, and then he calmly turned his head away. The charming female cultivator's face was pale. She knew that Zhuowen was pretending not to know her. Thinking of all the things that had happened between her and Zhuowen, the female cultivator felt uncomfortable. She did not expect Zhuowen to become so strong that she could only look up to him. Seeing that your harvest has been good recently, I'll be merciful this time and only take half of it. Zhuowen smirked and spread his right hand as he spoke to brother Yang and the others. Ah! My lord! This! Brother Yang's eyes were filled with anger, but he didn't dare to express it. What? You collect disaster crystals from others, so why can't I collect protection fees from you? Zhuowen's voice gradually turned cold. The source of the disaster crystals in the hands of brother Yang and the others was not legitimate. Therefore, Zhuowen did not have any psychological burden to take the disaster crystals from them. Brother Yang sighed and could only obediently hand over 50% of the disaster crystals on him. The other 8 naturally did not dare to disobey. Looking at the 240 disaster crystals in the storage bag, Zhuowen raised his brows. He was pleasantly surprised by the harvest of brother Yang and the others. Recently, Zhongyu opened up the trial grounds to the 4 main regions, so there are a lot of newcomers here. Brother Yang explained carefully. After putting away the calamity crystal, Zhuowen led Yun Chuyu into the doorway. Zhuowen. Suddenly, the charming female cultivator said. Zhuowen stopped and looked expressionlessly at the female cultivator behind him. Yun Chuyu also felt that Zhuowen was acting strangely. Her beautiful eyes slightly frowned as she looked at the charming female cultivator behind her. She curled her lips but did not say anything. Miss Hongshan, what's the matter? Zhuowen asked indifferently. Zhuowen naturally knew this charming female cultivator. She was Hongshan from the Brahma Fiend Star Jianghong Trading Company and Wu Han's granddaughter. Back when Zhuowen was being chased by Lei Qi's 5 subordinates, he happened to run into Wu Han and Hongshan. Wu Han coveted Zhuowen's fire spirit juice and profound yellow or vein and did not hold back at all. Zhuowen's good impression of Hongshan had long since disappeared. Although Zhuowen knew that Hongshan could also participate in the interstellar tournament, he did not expect to run into her here. It was quite a coincidence. Hongshan's pretty face paled. She could feel the coldness in Zhuowen's voice. She lowered her head and said, Zhuowen, I let you down back then. I didn't know that grandfather would deal with you. I only said that you had a lot of potential and needed to be roped in, but I didn't expect. Zhuowen shook his head and said, You don't need to say any more. What's done is done. I don't want to ask about your matters. Let's leave it at that. After saying this, Zhuowen said to brother Yang, If the 2 of them want to go in, you don't need to stop them. After saying this, Zhuowen completely disappeared from the doorway with Yun Chuyu. Hongshan stood there in a daze. She felt a lump in her throat, but she stubbornly refused to cry. Miss Hongshan, I didn't expect you to know such a capable person. I really misjudged you. Liang Dan hurriedly moved in front of Hongshan, a trace of reverence in his voice. Liang Dan and Hongshan had met in the canyon. Liang Dan had been stunned when he saw Hongshan and had walked together with her. In his heart, he had already decided that she would be his future companion. Liang Dan had also heard from Hongshan that she was only the granddaughter of the president of the Jianghong Trading Company on the Brahma Fiend planet. Liang Dan had also heard that the president of the Jianghong Trading Company, Wu Han, had been seriously injured and had been uprooted by the Dazzling Light Trading Company and the Long Rainbow Trading Company. Wu Han had even been killed by the two presidents. From then on, the Jianghong Trading Company had completely disappeared from the Brahma Fiend planet. Hongshan had been lucky enough to be teleported away by Wu Han and had entered the trial grounds to avoid being hunted down. Hongshan knew of Liang Dan's background, which was why she had acted together with him. Now, Hongshan was alone and had no one to rely on. The Jianghong Trading Company had been uprooted, and the Long Rainbow Trading Company and the Dazzling Light Trading Company were eyeing her covetously. She was very clear that if she couldn't find a strong pillar of support, even if she didn't die in the trial grounds, she wouldn't be able to live for long. The Long Rainbow Trading Company and the Dazzling Light Trading Company wouldn't let her go. Hongshan forced a smile and said, "Senior brother Liang is too polite. Zhuowen and I have only met once. We can't be considered good friends. The two of you, since the Lord has spoken, why aren't you getting in? Don't tell me you don't want to go in." Big brother Yang was suppressing a fire in his heart. Seeing Liang Dan prattling on, Big brother Yang was unusually irritated and couldn't help but speak coldly. "Ari, we'll go in now." Liang Dan had long since lost his previous arrogance and hurriedly pulled Hongshan into the doorway. After entering the doorway, golden ripples spread out in front of them. Misty fog surrounded them. These golden ripples are specifically targeted at the spirit. Zhuowen raised an eyebrow and looked at the golden ripples around him in surprise. He discovered that the golden ripples were constantly pouring into his spirit, constantly hammering his spirit like an awl. However, Zhuowen's spirit was far more powerful than the average cultivator's. The golden ripples that poured into his spirit did not affect him at all. Moreover, Zhuowen discovered that the moment the golden ripples entered his spirit, they were constantly tempering his spirit. He could clearly sense that his spirit was slowly strengthening, but the rate of strengthening was much slower. Compared to the relaxed Zhuowen, Yun Chuyu was not doing so well. Her face was ghastly pale as she bit down on her lower lip. It was as if she was enduring unimaginable pain. "Chuyu, these golden ripples are very beneficial to the spirit. Once you endure it, your spirit and consciousness will become much stronger," Zhuowen said softly. Hearing this, Yun Chuyu's eyes flashed. She nodded gently and began to endure the pain of the golden ripples invading her spirit. She also attempted to use the golden ripples to temper her spirit. Just as Zhuowen said, her spirit had indeed grown by leaps and bounds. The two of them continued to walk until they finally reached the end of the passageway. The fog dispersed. What appeared in front of Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu was an incomparably large hall. Surrounding the hall was a vast expanse of rocky ground, and the rocky ground was surrounded by rolling fog. The rocky ground was densely packed with cultivators. Some of these cultivators were sitting cross-legged, silently cultivating. Others were shouting and fighting. It was extremely noisy. Moreover, these fights were not over the top. Bloodshed and even deaths would often occur. Zhuowen discovered that there was no one around the cultivators sitting cross-legged on the ground. It was extremely spacious. Many of the surrounding cultivators looked at the cultivators sitting cross-legged with reverence in their eyes. Zhuowen's gaze fell on the large hall in front of him. He discovered that the golden ripples here were even more intense. The closer he got to the large hall, the more intense the golden ripples became. Suddenly, Yun Chuyu, who was beside Zhuowen, exclaimed in surprise, "Brother Zhuowen, it seems like I can extend my consciousness." Zhuowen looked at Yun Chuyu beside him and discovered that Yun Chuyu's consciousness could indeed be extended. Although it could only extend a few inches, it was still much better than not being able to extend her consciousness. "Chuyu, congratulations," Zhuowen said with a smile. Yun Chuyu smiled sweetly and immediately looked around. She asked doubtfully, "Is this the trial ground? There are so many people. Also, what is that large hall? Let's go and ask." Zhuowen said with a smile. "Brother, is this the first level of the trial ground? Also, what's with that large hall?" As he spoke, Zhuowen casually stopped a cultivator passing by and asked with a smile. The cultivator was slightly displeased. He looked at Zhuowen from head to toe and said snappily, "I can tell at a glance that you're a rookie who doesn't know anything. You're probably a cultivator from the other 4 regions who came to participate in the interstellar tournament, right?" Zhuowen smiled and nodded. He did not mind this person's unfriendly attitude at all. Seeing that Zhuowen's attitude was good, the person's expression eased a little. He continued, "In the trial ground, consciousness is more important than cultivation, especially in a place where consciousness is suppressed. The stronger one's consciousness is, the stronger one's strength will be. The trial ground is divided into a total of 18 levels. There is one on every level of this large hall. Only by passing the trial in this large hall can one enter the next level." Zhuowen nodded and immediately looked at the cultivators around him who were eager to give it a try but did not enter the large hall. He asked doubtfully, "If that's the case, why don't these cultivators outside enter the trial ground?" The cultivator shook his head and said, "The trial ground is not that simple. These people outside are all people who did not pass the trial ground. However, they are unwilling to stay on the first level, so they continue to cultivate, hoping to increase their strength and enter the second level." Chapter 1999. Zhu Quizhuowen was startled, and then his gaze fell on the cultivators sitting cross-legged in front of the hall. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see that these cultivators were sitting cross-legged, blocking the entrance of the hall. "I heard that there are a lot of disaster crystals in the trial ground. You can cultivate on the first floor, right? When the time comes, you can also pay the disaster crystals to enter the hall, right?" Zhuowen asked. The person shook his head and said, "The first floor is the place with the most cultivators in the trial ground. It's very chaotic here, and if you're not strong enough, even if you have the disaster crystals, you can't protect yourself. When I first came in, I also had some disaster crystals, but I was targeted by others. I see that you're also a newcomer, right? You'd better not reveal the disaster crystals on you, otherwise, if you're targeted by others, I'm afraid you won't be able to avoid a beating, and your life might even be in danger." Zhuowen nodded, somewhat surprised by this person's kind reminder. Thinking of this, Zhuowen took out 5 disaster crystals and secretly stuffed them to this person, saying, "Thank you for your explanation, brother. This is the reward, take it." At first, this person was a little confused, but when he took a look, it was actually 5 disaster crystals, and he almost cried out in surprise. He thought of something and immediately put away the disaster crystals, and looked around vigilantly. Then, he whispered to Zhuowen, "Thank you, brother. It's fine, you deserve it." Zhuowen smiled and waved his hand. The cultivator in front of him could not release his divine sense, so he could not use his spirit ring, and could only hide his disaster crystals in his sleeve. After speaking, Zhuowen brought Yun Chuyu and walked towards the hall. This cultivator naturally saw Zhuowen's actions and saw that he was walking towards the hall. His eyes were filled with shock, and he hurriedly transmitted his voice to stop him. Unfortunately, Zhuowen turned a deaf ear. Deng deng deng. The sound of footsteps slowly sounded, and Zhuowen walked straight towards the hall. He deliberately spread the sound of his footsteps with his divine power. At this moment, the cultivators on the rocky ground all quieted down, and they stared straight at the young man walking towards the hall. In front of the main hall, the 5 cultivators slowly opened their eyes and calmly looked at the approaching Zhuowen. "You want to enter the main hall to train?" The blue-robed cultivator in the lead asked calmly. "Yes," Zhuowen said. 100 disaster crystals per person, or scram, the blue-robed cultivator said indifferently. Zhuowen did not mind, but continued, "I heard that this hall has been reserved by you guys. I remember that this training ground doesn't belong to you, right? What qualifications do you have to reserve this hall for everyone to train in, and even shamelessly ask for such a sky-high price?" As soon as he said this, the rocky ground became even more silent. Many cultivators looked at Zhuowen as if they were looking at an idiot. The cultivator who had been gifted the disaster crystal by Zhuowen had a bad feeling in his heart. He didn't expect Zhuowen to be so courageous, to actually dare to challenge those 5 cultivators. Those 5 were the strongest cultivators on the first floor, and all of them were existences that had cultivated out divine sense. How dare you say such words? Today, I will teach you a lesson and let you know that there are some people you are not qualified to offend. The blue-robed cultivator's eyes were cold, and with a wave of his sleeve, a blue long sword appeared in his hand. His powerful divine sense wrapped around the blue long sword, and it turned into a blue light, directly stabbing towards Zhuowen's vital point. In the first floor, there were very few people who could cultivate divine sense. This blue-robed cultivator was definitely one of the best on the first floor. Moreover, Zhuowen found that this person's divine sense was stronger than Brother Yang's, and it was actually about 7 meters long. Thinking of Brother Yang's lonely look when he mentioned the first floor, Brother Yang was probably driven out by these 5 people. This person is dead, he dared to offend Zhu Kui. Many of the surrounding cultivators sneered at the sight of the aqua-blue longsword flying out. Zhu Kui was able to stir up trouble here, so he naturally had a strong foundation and capital. Back then, Zhu Kui had killed many cultivators here, which won him a great reputation. Sigh. The cultivator who had been gifted the disaster crystal by Zhuowen turned pale and sighed in his heart. He knew that Zhuowen was doomed. Unfortunately, the aqua-blue long sword had just arrived in front of Zhuo when it suddenly came to a halt. The long sword that had stopped suddenly changed direction and swept towards Zhu Kui. What's going on? Zhu Kui was completely dumbfounded. He stared blankly at the incoming aqua-blue sword, his divine sense pouring out of his divine soul in an attempt to block the oncoming sword. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he tried to control it, the long sword did not listen to his command and resolutely stabbed towards his vital point. Poochie. Zhu Kui's head was cut off, fell to the ground, and rolled a few times. The entire rocky ground fell into silence. This scene was too strange. The sword that should have been charging towards Zhuo had changed direction at the last moment and killed its master, Zhu Kui. The 4 cultivators sitting cross-legged behind Zhu Kui were shocked. They all stood up and looked at Zhuowen in shock. They were not stupid. They knew that Zhu Kui's death was definitely related to the young man in front of them. Zhuowen slowly walked to Zhu Kui's corpse, squatted down, and took off his spirit ring. After checking it, he found that there were a lot of disaster crystal stones in the spirit ring, more than 500 of them. If there is anyone who dares to stand in the toilet without taking a shit, then don't blame me, Zhuowen, for being impolite. After saying that, Zhuowen stared coldly at the other 4 cultivators, causing them to tremble all over. They lowered their heads, not daring to look at Zhuowen. Since this hall is a trial ground and the place to enter the 2nd floor, everyone can enter and leave at will. As for those who charge a fee to enter, they deserve to die. After saying that, the aqua-blue long sword turned into a blue line and quickly pierced through the necks of the 4 cultivators. Then, 4 more corpses appeared on the ground. After doing this, Zhuowen brought Yun Chuyu into the hall. After a brief moment of sluggishness, the rocky ground cheered and swarmed into the hall. They had wanted to enter the hall for a long time, but unfortunately, Zhu Kui's group of 5 had always occupied the best position in the hall because they had cultivated their divine sense first. If they wanted to enter the trial ground, they had to pay 100 disaster crystal stones. In the first floor of the trial ground, it was too difficult to obtain 100 disaster crystal stones. Now, Zhuowen had killed Zhu Kui's group of 5 and abolished the fee system. How could they not be happy? How could they not be excited? Some people even shouted Zhuowen's name. Not long after Zhuowen entered the hall, a group of people rushed in behind him. Fortunately, the interior of the hall was very spacious, and these people did not dare to run in front of Zhuowen, so they did not hinder Zhuowen. Master Zhuo. Suddenly, a respectful voice came from beside Zhuowen. Then, Zhuowen found that the cultivator he had asked before had walked to his side, his face full of caution. It's you. Do you know how the trial is conducted in this hall? Zhuowen smiled slightly, but his gaze fell on the 2 doors in front of the hall. He found that one of the doors was covered with a powerful restriction array, while the other door did not have any restrictions at all. Oh, Master Zhuo, it's like this. These 2 doors represent 2 different trial methods. Hearing Zhuowen's question, the person said enthusiastically, the door with restrictions is the most direct trial. As long as your divine sense is strong enough, you can directly break it and then directly enter the second floor. As for the door without restrictions, there is a black iron door with strange numbers on it. It is said that as long as you solve the strange numbers, the black iron door will open and automatically let you enter the second floor. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows and said, "There are two options, which one do you choose?" "The door with restrictions because it is the fastest. Generally, cultivators with strength will choose this one. As for the second one, it is reserved for cultivators who are not strong enough." The cultivator said respectfully, "I see, then I will try the door with restrictions first." Zhuowen nodded, and then he walked over to the entrance that was covered in restrictions. Zhuowen's divine sense was far superior to all the cultivators here. When he came to the door, he could feel that the restrictions on the door were extraordinary, but to him, it should not be too much of an obstacle. Zhuowen's actions naturally attracted the attention of all the cultivators. Zhu Kui was killed by this person, which showed that this person's divine sense was very strong and could possibly enter the second floor. Crack! Zhuowen's divine sense transformed into a palm and fiercely slammed into the restriction, shattering it. As expected, he is really strong. Zhu Kui is strong enough, but he can't break the restriction on the door, but this person broke it so easily. Aren't you King talking nonsense? Didn't you see that this master killed Zhu Kui in an instant? If this master can't break the restriction on the door, then we can forget about it. Sounds of discussion gradually rose. Everyone did not find it strange that Zhuowen was able to shatter the restriction on the door. "Chuyu, go in," Zhuowen said to Yun Chuyu. "Hey, brother Zhuo, you." Yun Chuyu was a little surprised. Zhuowen said with a smile, "Don't worry, since I can break this restriction once, I can naturally break it a second time. Don't you want to avenge your father? If you stay on the first floor like this, I'm afraid you won't even pass the first round." Hearing this, Yun Chuyu did not hesitate and walked through the door. Zhuowen was right. She still had a blood feud on her shoulders. If she stayed on the first floor, it was very likely that she would be eliminated. If she lost the opportunity to enter this trial ground, it would be very difficult for her to have such a chance to advance so quickly again. After Yun Chuyu entered, another restriction appeared on the door, isolating Zhuowen outside. Clearly, only one person could enter the door. Zhuowen did not care at all. Once again, he condensed a large palm with his divine sense and slammed it fiercely on the restriction. Poochie. However, what shocked Zhuowen was that the moment his divine sense palm slammed into the restriction, it immediately dissipated. Chapter 2000. The 10th floor. Zhuowen's pupils shrank as he stared fixedly at the restriction gate in front of him. This restriction gate was too strange. Its aura was clearly the same as before, but his divine sense was actually repelled. "Lord Zhuo, perhaps you don't know? That restrictive door can only be broken by the same person once. It's basically impossible to break it a second time. Instead, you'll suffer a backlash from the palace's power." The cultivator trembled as he spoke, but his heart was filled with sighs. In fact, he should have told Zhuowen about this earlier, but he had not thought of it before. He also did not expect that Zhuowen would actually let Yun Chuyu go in first. Was this not causing him trouble? The surrounding people also revealed a trace of pity. Clearly, they did not expect that Zhuowen would give this opportunity to the veiled woman. Are there no other opportunities? Zhuowen was shocked. He didn't expect there to be such a rule here. However, after giving it some thought, he felt relieved. If that was the case, wouldn't it mean that those powerful cultivators could let in as many people as they wanted? This was clearly a violation of the rules of the trial grounds. There is, but you can't enter this door with restrictions. You need to enter another door. You need to solve the problem on the black iron door before you can enter. The cultivator said helplessly. "I see. Then I'll give it a try." Zhuowen nodded, and then he entered another door. Everyone at the back looked at each other and followed behind Zhuowen. There were no restrictions on the door, so it couldn't stop them at all. Furthermore, They were also very curious as to whether or not the powerful young man in front of them would be able to pass through the door of wisdom after losing the opportunity to enter the second level through martial strength. Zhuowen looked at the huge black iron door in front of him and smiled bitterly. The black iron door was extremely thick. Others might not be able to see it, but he could see that the restriction patterns on the black iron door existed on the inside and not on the outside. The restriction inside the black iron door was many times more advanced than the restriction on the other door. Zhuowen knew that the restriction within the black iron door should have been set up by a very powerful god formation master. Soon, Zhuowen's attention landed on the numbers on the iron door. When his gaze landed on the iron door, a hoarse voice rang out in his mind. There are 5 numbers here. Arrange the 5 numbers in a row. The first number must be adjacent to the second number, and the second number must be on the right of the first number. How many arrangements are there? You only have 10 breaths of time. Zhuowen's gaze landed on the numbers. The numbers were very strange. Zhuowen had never seen numbers like this before, and every number was different. However, when Zhuowen heard the voice, he was stunned for 2 seconds before a strange expression appeared on his face. This was because the problem that the voice that suddenly appeared in his mind was actually a problem of permutation and combination. Zhuowen was a university student in Huaxia in his previous life. After many years of examination, especially mathematics, he was very familiar with the so-called permutation and combination. Although his results were very poor, he was very familiar with many mathematical formulas. In addition, Zhuowen's calculation ability was even more terrifying than a computer. Once he grasped the formula, the permutation question was not difficult at all. Of course, Zhuowen's main advantage was that he knew the formula. Other cultivators did not know the formula and could only count them one by one. This was very easy to make mistakes. Moreover, the voice only gave him 10 breaths of time. In such a short time, it was very difficult to find the correct answer. Zhuowen did not even think about it and said silently, 24. Creak. Just as Zhuowen finished answering, the black iron door in front of him slowly opened. It solved so quickly. Many of the cultivators behind Zhuowen were stunned on the spot. This scene was really shocking. Naturally, many cultivators had tried this door before, but all of them were wrong. Moreover, the problem was completely different every time they entered the door, so the solution was useless. Until the black iron door closed, many of the cultivators present were still in a daze. Could it be that this black iron door's problem has become easier? A cultivator did not believe it and came to the black iron door. After 10 breaths of time, the cultivator was fiercely pushed back by an invisible force and sat on the ground. Everyone was startled and realized that it was not that the problem had become easier, but that Zhuowen who had entered was not simple. After stepping through the black iron door, there was still a very long passage, and the passage was surrounded by a misty fog. Zhuowen's divine sense was strong enough, but it could not penetrate the surrounding fog. It's this golden ripple again. This golden ripple is much thicker than the first layer. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He immediately sat cross-legged and guided the golden ripple into his divine soul. Moreover, Zhuowen felt that the absorption speed was too slow, so he used Devour's devouring power. Instantly, the golden ripple turned into a golden storm around him, constantly swirling and sweeping. Zhuowen's absorption speed became faster and faster, and the golden storm became more turbulent. The surrounding golden ripple also became less and less. Zhuowen sat there for a full 3 days, absorbing all the golden ripples in the area. With the help of the golden ripples, his divine sense improved by leaps and bounds. The range of his divine sense doubled, reaching 200 meters. Zhuowen's lips curled. He knew that the increase of his divine sense in this place was the increase of his strength. Naturally, he was very happy. Oh! It seems that the main body has completely recovered. Zhuowen exclaimed softly, then immediately summoned the white-clothed Zhuowen. The main body's clothes were whiter than snow, and there was not a speck of dust on them. The black-clothed Zhuowen gave all his equipment to the white-clothed Zhuowen. The main body hasn't passed the lightning disaster yet. Why don't you let the main body absorb some disaster crystals to pass the lightning disaster and directly become a 2-disaster true god? Zhuowen muttered. The main body had a human body, and he had planned to let the main body reach the void sky realm quickly. After all, the main body had the help of the illusory heavenly bridge. It would be much easier for the main body to reach the void sky realm compared to Devour. As for Devour, he planned to let him become an extreme grade true god, so he wasn't in a hurry to pass the lightning disaster. After all, he didn't have many disaster crystals. Moreover, as the number of lightning disasters increased, Zhuowen realized that the number of disaster crystals he needed was also increasing. The number of disaster crystals he had wasn't enough for the black-clothed Zhuowen's 6th lightning disaster to approach. Thus, Zhuowen simply let the main body absorb the remaining disaster crystals. Zhuowen stayed here for another 5 days. His main body squandered all the calamity crystals on him, and even absorbed all the calamity crystal cores he took out from Gaylord's body. What surprised Zhuowen was that the energy within the disaster crystal nucleus was much denser than the disaster crystals. Zhuowen estimated that 1 disaster crystal nucleus was equivalent to 1,000 disaster crystals. Originally, Zhuowen had 500 disaster crystals and 1 disaster crystal nucleus. His main body's aura had reached the peak of the 1st disaster true god realm. Moreover, he had accumulated 10 lightning disasters. If I had known that the energy within the disaster crystal nucleus was so dense, I would have let the black-clothed Zhuowen absorb it. The white-clothed Zhuowen slowly stood up and looked at the 10 lightning gates in the sky. His gaze was grave. The main body had a human body, so the requirement for disaster crystals wasn't as abnormal as the black-clothed Zhuowen's. 500 disaster crystals and 1 disaster crystal nucleus had allowed the main body to attract 10 lightning disasters. These 10 lightning disasters should be dealt with slowly. Perhaps there will be a need later. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. The might of the 10 lightning gates was very terrifying. If he were to fight against an enemy, it would definitely have an unexpected effect. Zhuowen didn't want to go through the lightning disaster right now. Thinking of this, Zhuowen waved his sleeve and used Formless to conceal his aura. The 10 lightning gates in the sky couldn't sense Zhuowen's aura and immediately collapsed. Of course, this collapse was only temporary. Once Zhuowen started fighting, his aura would definitely be exposed. At that time, the lightning gates would appear again. Because Zhuowen possessed the heavenly lightning eye, he wasn't afraid of lightning disasters. However, once the main body advanced to the 1st disaster true god realm, Zhuowen wouldn't have such strong resistance to fire. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to advance to the 1st disaster true god realm. It's time to go. Zhuowen slowly walked out of the passage. After he walked out of the exit, he discovered that he was in a lake that stretched as far as the eye could see. In the center of the lake, there was a large hall. He knew that this was the 2nd level of the training ground. There was no doubt that the number of people on the 2nd level was much fewer than on the 1st level. However, it was still crowded. Moreover, on the 2nd level, there were many cultivators who had cultivated divine consciousness. It was also much more orderly than on the 1st level. Moreover, no one stopped people from entering the large hall to train on the 2nd level. Zhuowen found Yun Chuyu, who was anxiously waiting near the large hall. Yun Chuyu had obviously also benefited from the golden ripples. Her divine consciousness could already reach about 10 meters. The large hall on the 2nd level had the same structure as on the 1st level. It was also divided into 2 large doors. One door was for martial strength, and the other was for intelligence. Just like the last time, Zhuowen used his divine consciousness to destroy the door of the martial strength stage and sent Yun Chuyu in. Meanwhile, he entered the intelligence stage. After that, Zhuowen and Yun Chuyu went up level by level without a hitch. Soon, they arrived at the 10th level. Zhuowen's divine consciousness had also been greatly improved. It could now reach 2,000 meters, while Yun Chuyu's divine consciousness had reached 100 meters. Moreover, the cultivators on the 10th level were all extraordinary. None of them had a divine consciousness range of less than 100 meters. Big Brother Zhuo, I don't plan to go any further. After entering the 10th level, I think I can enter the second round of the interstellar tournament. My results will definitely be good. I've troubled you along the way, Yun Chuyu said sincerely. Zhuoan stopped and looked at Yun Chuyu. After seeing that she was serious, he nodded and said, Chuyu, you can cultivate on the 10th level from now on. There's still a lot of time. Moreover, there are many calamity crystals on the 10th level. With your current divine consciousness strength, it won't be a problem for you to become a true god 2 disasters. You can even become a true god 3 disasters before you leave. Yun Chuyu nodded and said softly, Big brother Zhuo, I know that you are very strong and that you will continue to advance. I heard from others that the trial grounds will become very frightening after the 10th level. You must be careful. Don't worry, I'll be careful. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.